welcome to the live proceedings of the Senate on this very last day of May, the date being the very 31st of May, the year is 2023. This is an afternoon sitting of the Senate on this particular Wednesday, brought to you courtesy of the collaboration between the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. You can also watch this particular live broadcast on our YouTube channels. That is courtesy of the Senate of Kenya, as well as on KBC Channel 1. The Prompt Payment Bill, Senate Bills number 8 of the year 2022, is a bill that senators will be resuming debate on this afternoon. And this particular bill has been given priority in the order paper today, and after the lapse or the conclusion of the time allocated for debate, senators will be moving into division. The Cotton Industry Development Bill, Bill number 5 of the year 2023, by nominated Senator Beth Siengo, is also another bill that senators will be resuming debate on this afternoon. And again, after the conclusion of the time allocated for debate, senators will move into division. And what usually happens under this category is that senators will be voting to either pass or reject these particular bills. After consideration of those two crucial bills, the Senate will move into the Committee of the Whole, where two bills will be considered under this category. These are the Equalization Funds Appropriations Bill, this being Senate Bills number 3 of the year 2023 by the Chairperson Standing Committee on Matters Finance and Budget. Another bill that will be considered by the Committee of the Whole is the County Vocational Education and Training Bill. This is Senate Bills number 3 of the year 2022 by the Senator for Homa Bay County, Senator Moses Kajwang. The Majority Leader will be moving a motion on the suspension of the morning sittings of the Senate on Wednesday, June 7th, the year is 2023, that notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate made on the 16th of February and the 29th of March, and pursuant to the standing orders number 3-2 on the approval of the Senate calendar. This is for regular sessions for the second session, and further notwithstanding the provisions of standing orders number 34, subsection 1, the Senate resolves to suspend its morning sitting on Wednesday, 7th June 2023. This afternoon, senators will equally be resuming debate on the Employment Amendment Bill, a bill by Senator Samson Cherargei, Bill number 11 of the year 2022. Declaration of cattle rustling as a national disaster and establishment of a special fund for victims is a motion that will be moved by the Baringo Senator, Honorable William Cheptumo. And in this particular motion, the Senator seeks to have the Senate resolve that the national government, through the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, in collaboration with the Council of Governors, do declare cattle rustling as a national disaster, establish a national task force on cattle rustling to, one, investigate causes of rampant cattle rustling in the said region and the country at large, as well as establish the extent of loss and damage of cattle rustling occasioned to the communities in all the affected areas. And finally, create a special fund for mitigating the losses suffered by and in compensating all victims of cattle rustling and settle all internally displaced persons occasioned by the menace. Designation of a monthly car-free day and county car-free zones is a motion for consideration this afternoon. This particular motion is by a nominated Senator Crystal Asige, and Senator Crystal, in her motion, she seeks to have the Senate urge the Minister of Road Transport, in collaboration with the Council of Governors and the National Climate Change Council, identify as well as publicize and execute suitable monthly car-free days and county car-free zones in urban areas, as well as encourage the use of electric hybrid buses to provide appropriate incentives for their use. The Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi, is in the chambers this afternoon. Allow me to hand you over for this particular live broadcast.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom we have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you've committed to our church. Amen. Cloud, we have quorum. Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
The Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi, has directed that the quorum bell be rung for 10 minutes, pursuant to standing orders of the Senate that gives him those particular powers to ensure that at each particular time when the House is transacting business, senators must raise quorum. And currently, we don't have that particular quorum, and we have a leeway of 10 minutes to give time to senators who are yet to make their way into the chamber this afternoon to do that. Over 30 reports from the Office of the Auditor General are set to be tabled this afternoon, and these particular audit reports are reports in regards to how various state corporations as well as municipal boards and counties utilized their budgetary allocation for the year ending June 2021 and June 2020, as well as June 2022. There will be 2 petitions before the House this afternoon. One of the petitions to the Senate is by Mr. Jaffa Moksin on behalf of Kenyatta University Student Association, KUSA, Medical and School of Economics, concerning the management and use of Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Research Hospital by medical students at Kenyatta University. Another petition that is currently before the House is a petition to the Senate by residents of Chokaa concerning the illegal demolition of houses by Kenya Power and Lighting Company in Chokaa at Mihango area. Pursuant to standing orders of the House, standing orders number 51, subsection 53, subsection 1, senators will be seeking statements from various standing committees of the House. And to just take you through some of these particular statements, there are quite a number. The Senator for Meru County, Senator Kathuri Murungi, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Education concerning the high transfer rate of teachers at KK Makalamatu Primary School in Karama Ward in Tigania East constituency and other schools in Meru County. The senator in the neighboring county of Embu that borders Meru, the Senator Alexander Mudigi, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations regarding alleged disparity in development within Embu County. From Embu County and Meru, let's now look at the statement by the Senator for Lamu County, who will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters, Roads and Transportation concerning the status of the construction of the link road between Lake Kenyatta Primary and Uziwa Junction in Lamu County. Senator Raphael Chimera, a nominated senator, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters, Roads, Transportation and Housing concerning the construction of the Kwale Kinango Road. The Senator for Murang'a County, Senator John Yutu, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters, Trade, Industrialization and Tourism concerning the circumstances that led to the closure of Murang'a County creameries. Pursuant to Standing Orders number 57, subsection 1, the Senate Leader of Majority will be issuing a statement on the business of the Senate commencing 6th of June, the year being 2023. The quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over for this particular live broadcast. Enjoy your viewing.
So kindly stop the bell. Clerk, you may proceed to call the first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon 2 members of staff from the County Assembly of Mandera. The officers are in the Senate for 2 weeks attachment program in the Directorate of Legislative and Procedural Services. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish them a fruitful program. Again, Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, visiting students from Kenyatta University comprising members of the Kenyatta University Student Association, KUSA. The delegation is at the Senate for a study visit. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow the Senator for Mandera to make very brief welcoming remarks to welcome the delegation from Mandera County, and also I will invite the minority leader to make very brief welcoming remarks to welcome the students from Kenyatta University Students Association. In that order, kindly proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our team from Mandera County Assembly who are here to learn from Parliament of Kenya and particularly the Senate to this Senate. And I'm sure you will find a lot of valuable time to learn, procedures, processes, in order to make your processes better as an assembly and within your own jurisdiction. Mine is just to say, karibuni na pongezi kwa kukua hapa. Asante.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, pia mimi nataka kuungana na wewe kuwakaribisha wanafunzi wa Kenyatta University Students Association kwa kuja katika bunge letu la Senate. Kitu ambacho nafikiria ni muhimu kuweza kujua ni kwamba mtajua taratibu zile ambazo tunaenda nazo hapa katika bunge la Senate. Kanuni zetu za kudumu ziko na ndio zinaweza zinaongoza bunge hili. Bwana Spika, pia vile vile nataka kusema kwamba najua wakiwa hapa watajifundisha mengi, na kuna uhakika ya kwamba wengine wenu wanaweza kuwa masenators na mkajikuta hapa. Kwa hiyo na hakika kwamba mnatumia wakati huu kuangalia na kuona viongozi wenu ambao wako katika Senate hivi sasa, na kuona ya kwamba nyinyi pia mko na uwezo na taaluma ya kwamba mkiendelea katika maisha yenu, na hati itakapotakana na wananchi wa kutoka katika eneo lako na kwamba uwe seneta, unaweza kujipata huko hapa. Kwa hiyo karibuni sana, na natumaini ya kwamba mtakapokuwa mmerudi huko mtajua bunge la Senate linafanya kazi gani na ni kina nani wako katika bunge la Senate wanaenda taratibu zao na kanuni zao za kudumu namna gani. Asanteni sana.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable Senators, I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted to the Senate by Mr. Jaffa Muhsin Kasava concerning the management and use of Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital by medical students at the Kenyatta University. As you are aware, under Article 119(1) of the Constitution, and I quote, "Every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation." Honorable Senators, the silent issues raised in the said petition are as follows: that the petitioners are students of Kenyatta University, representing the Kenyatta University Students Association; that in the year 2004, Kenyatta University started a School of Health Sciences in order to consolidate the training of medical professionals; that the plan was to use the school to enable students get the absolute best exposure to enable them to level up to the global standards in healthcare training; that the government approved the proposal and the funding request by the Kenyatta University to establish a state-of-the-art teaching, training, research, and referral hospital at the main campus, which will serve as a national referral center, as well as to aid medical students in their clinical training and research; that Kenyatta University's strategic plan 2016-2026 envisaged a medical hub that would incorporate the operationalization of Kenyatta University Teaching, Research and Referral Hospital, construction of a children's hospital and women's hospital, establishment of a center for medical research and continuing education, a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant that will serve the entire region and offer training to pharmaceutical professionals, and a research center in alternative medicine; that despite the proposal by the Kenyatta University to establish KUTRRH as a university hospital, it was established as a standalone parastatal via legal notice number 4 of 2019, which has put in jeopardy the entire medical education fraternity at the university and disrupted the entire process of realization of the intended objectives; that even though the facility is fully functional, lecturers and medical students from Kenyatta University have been denied access by the hospital management for teaching and learning. The situation would render many of the medical students deregistered or forced to enroll afresh elsewhere to pursue their studies in medicine; that Kenyatta University has been relying on infrastructure and facilities from other health institutions to train health professionals, a situation that is not sustainable. Moreover, these institutions are not able to offer specialized training for healthcare professionals beyond undergraduate level, and yet there is enormous need for more health professionals and demand for training in the health sciences in Kenya; that the petitioners have made efforts to address the matter, but the relevant authorities, all of which have failed to give a satisfactory response. The petitioners, therefore, pray the Senate as follows. 1, to intervene in this matter through the relevant committee with a view to ensure that full access to KUTRRH be granted to Kenyatta University medical students to utilize the hospital for their learning purpose. 2, recommends that legal notice number 4 of 2019, which recognizes KUTRRH as a standalone parastatal, be revoked. And finally, that the KUTRRH be reverted to a university hospital for use by the students in the College of Health Sciences. Now, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observation, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to make my comment on this petition. Mr. Speaker, when I served in the National Assembly in the 12th Parliament, a similar petition came to the National Assembly, but the petitioner was the WASU, the University Academic Staff Union. The petition went to the Health Committee. It was exhaustively handled there. And then later on, it went to the Implementation Committee, where I served as the Vice Chair. And I have quite a lot of information about this. Mr. Speaker, this is a very simple matter that the government can address, because the institution, in this case, Kenyatta University Referral Hospital, was initially funded by the government. And then they got funding from other donors. But the government then decided to set up, through a legal notice, a parastatal, where they appointed the board and made it look like it is independent from the university. I think if you look at the reports done by the National Assembly, it was very clear that the university, the hospital should be taken back to the university. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm just giving this background information so that the committee that will be looking at this can also get an opportunity to look at the reports that were done by the National Assembly to inform the decision that needs to be taken. Otherwise, I support the petition, and it is important that the hospital reverts to the university as initially envisaged, instead of running independent of the university and appearing to be denying the student the opportunity to use the facilities which are offered at the university. I support the petition.
Senator Boni.
Mr. Speaker, very surprising. In fact, I have no idea how the people running the so-called parastatal hospital fail to see the benefit of having a symbiotic relationship between their so-called parastatal and the university. The university is going into that relationship to teach and do research. And in the process, Mr. Speaker, the same doctors, same specialists, the same students will serve the hospital for free. Because medical professionals, when they are teaching at the university, they are paid by the university. And then when they go to the hospital, they only take their students there to go and train them. They continue doing their research. So the hospital has got cheap labor by way of continuing students, by way of the lecturers. So the problem here, Osotsi, is that parastatal, which you seem to have grasped very well, is being run by people who are only seeing the money. So they are fearing that the other arm of the university will come and partake of that money, and they do not want to they do not want to share the money as such. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support, we should protect the patients. Because, Mr. Speaker, those busybodies who are now running that parastatal / hospital are only seeing the money, are not seeing the specialized services that they are denying those patients. So as a house that protects the public, we should ensure that we go for that legal notice. Osothi has talked of a legal notice. We go for the legal notice, either we repeal it, or if Sifuna calls it in law, we tear it into pieces, or you call it repealing, whatever you call it. That is where the problem is, and then life will be just normal. I support the petition strongly.
Senator Mazayo.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kama kuna wakati wowote nchi hii ilikuwa inahitaji msaada, ni msaada wa madaktari. Kama kuna wakati wowote katika wanafunzi wanaojifundisha taaluma tofauti tofauti, lakini za muhimu za kusaidia Wakenya wakiwa ni wagonjwa, ni usomaji ama taaluma ya udaktari. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha kuona ya kwamba wanafunzi wanaweza kuwa wanajisomea kuwa madaktari, alafu unapata ya kwamba chuo kile cha kwamba ni referral ama naita uchunguzi wa magonjwa tofauti tofauti ambayo yanaweza kuletwa katika hospitali yaweze kufaidi watoto ili wapate taaluma zaidi ya kuweza kuokoa maisha wa Kenya. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha. Na ikiwa kwamba inajulikana ya kwamba kuna mgawanyiko, ya kwamba skuli ya kujifundisha udaktari na ile ya taaluma wamechukua sasa, wameenda pande nyingine wale mabwenyenye, ni kitu muhimu Bwana Spika ya kwamba hii legal notice ambayo iliweza kuchapishwa na kuweza kugawanya hii hospitali moja kwa mara mbili na ile nyingine ikaenda na watu wengine, tunasema kwamba hiyo ilikuwa si sawa. Na kama si sawa Bwana Spika, umuhimu ni kwamba katika hii petition ambayo imeletwa, ikiwa inaweza kupelekwa katika kamati ile yetu ya afya ambayo itaweza kuangalia jambo hili, iangalie kwa kina ya kwamba ile legal notice ama ile taarifa ya serikali iliyopeana kuweza kugawanya hivi vitengo viwili vya hospitali na ile ya referral, basi tunaona kwamba hapo hakukuwa na sababu maalum ama sababu muafaka. Tunasema ya kwamba iweze kuondolewa ili wanafunzi wale wanaojifunza udaktari waweze pia kupewa nafasi ya kuenda katika ile pande ya research, ili waweze kufanya research zao ama kuweza kufanya uchunguzi wa magonjwa na kuweza kupata taaluma hiyo pia. Kwa hiyo mimi kwa maoni yangu ni kwamba ikiwa itapelekwa katika kamati husikana, ni lazima ichunguze jinsi itaangalia ile legal notice iko namna gani na kuweza kuiondoa ili wanafunzi waweze kupata taaluma hiyo. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Roba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance to contribute to this motion. It is extremely important, Honorable Speaker, that always the purpose for which an institution is established is followed to the letter. When Kenyatta University announced that they are going to establish a state-of-the-art medical facility within the university, the country was engulfed with an air of excitement, Mr. Speaker, looking at the residual benefit that is going to accrue to students that are going to get the opportunity to train their practice within the hospital. It's very sad if then, after establishing, the management of that university decides to privatize the institution and lock out students from benefiting from that hospital. As we get the opportunity to travel in many countries, Mr. Speaker, the best hospitals in most of these countries are university hospitals run by the university. Now, for the management of that institution to feel that the students and lecturers should not access is a very sad position. The last term of government, Mr. Speaker, I was exposed, the nation was exposed to a very bad decision when Honorable Balala, the then CS for tourism, made a decision to say Kenya Utalii College was not doing very well, and as such, it should be auctioned or sold. The purpose of establishing such college was never for profit making. It was for purpose of industrial training attachment to be able to produce creme de la creme of professionals in the hotel and tourism sector. And if the managers do not understand the purpose, then we are left disadvantaged. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support that this institution should be given back to the university for us to get the best of all training for our students in the university and for the lecturers to be able to benefit from it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Edwin Sifuna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes you sit in this house and you hear things and you wonder, where did common sense go in this country? I mean, we should just go back to common sense. How is it you build a hospital next to a university? The university teaches medicine. The hospital was intended to actually help in the advancement of medical studies. Then you give a legal notice saying that that university cannot be utilized by students of that same university to study the same thing for which the hospital was built. Mr. Speaker, honestly, as a country, we need to find common sense again in governance. There are many things that you hear and they just don't make any sense. I would be very interested once this petition is committed to the relevant committee, when the minister responsible for health, or whoever it is that is responsible for this, we would want to share in that wisdom. Because from where I sit, with the facts that have been read to me and what Honorable Ososi has submitted on the floor, there is absolutely no sense why institutions that operate door to door, one that should be symbiotic, a relationship that should be symbiotic, as Honorable Khalwale has said, somehow does not exist. Mr. Speaker, there are many examples of things that just don't make sense in this country. But this one, I think, for this week, because Kenya will surprise you. For this week, I think this is ranking a distant first after another one I heard yesterday about ranking schools on the number of trees that are planted, Mr. Speaker. But I don't want to go into it. I support this petition, Mr. Speaker, and I would be very interested to listen to the rationale, the thinking, because I just don't get it from where I sit. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Aaron Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very interesting petition, and I wish that the petitioners had actually attached, or probably it came as part of the documents that came with the petition, this legal notice number 4 of 2019, where this decision was made and sought to be anchored in law. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that it has held so since 2019 up to date. If you go to Moi University, Mr. Speaker, especially the town campus, you will see the kind of interaction that trainee doctors have with doctors that are in actual practice at the hospital. The trainee doctors from Moi University Medicine School and the doctors that practice at Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. If you go not very far from here at Kenyatta, if you've had opportunity to visit patients at Kenyatta Hospital, Mr. Speaker, you know that on most afternoons, if you take those very infamous lifts of Kenyatta Hospital, you will find people with badges that are written trainee doctors, and mostly they'll be in a company, about 2 or 3 of them, following around some of the senior doctors that are practicing. I guess that's all that these students of Kenyatta University are asking of us, that their trainee doctors get to have a chance to practice and train and learn alongside their professional seniors. So I do not know, unless there's something beyond good reason, Mr. Speaker, I think as Senator Sifuna says, and I agree with him entirely in the things that he's saying, save for the fact that he needs civic education on the importance of trees, Mr. Speaker. You know, when during President Moi's days, there used to be the very famous topic, momonyoko wa udongo. I think Senator Sifuna may have missed that lesson, especially at this time where Senator Moses Kajwang is a leader of a very important caucus in this House on climate action. And I believe part of what the rallying call that they are asking us to do is to do exactly just that, Mr. Speaker. However, back to this particular petition, these are such petitions that we don't need to have 60 days. This is something that you call Susan Nakumincha and the good minister who was here before us today, Machogu. And ask of them that please prepare a cabinet memo or a legal notice, take it back to the president, because it looks straightforward to us that all these students are asking for is an opportunity to learn, Mr. Speaker. It needs not even to have gotten to this parliament, because in fact, part of the first questions that you ask them is that, what are you doing in office until citizens have to petition parliament for such decisions to be made, Mr. Speaker? So it's my sincere most hope, Mr. Speaker, that our committee will quickly dispense of this matter and the students of Kenyatta University can enjoy what is rightfully theirs. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the chance.
Senator Muma. Catherine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this, to speak to this issue. Mr. Speaker, I urge that we support this petition and for the Committee on Health to actually treat this as an urgent issue. Mr. Speaker, as far as I know, universities are not allowed to incorporate a medical school unless that medical school is attached to a teaching and referral facility. Mr. Speaker, Kenyatta University, when it began, was largely focusing on education. Nairobi focused on engineering and medicine, and Kenyatta was focusing largely on education. When Kenyatta applied and introduced the medical school, it was also facilitated to set up the Kenyatta National Teaching and Referral Hospital. Mr. Speaker, what is said in that petition is appalling, that anybody would deny the Kenyatta University students and medical school trainers or lecturers from using the very facility that was set up because of that medical school. It sounds like a big joke. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Kenyatta National Hospital, it is the teaching and referral facility for the University of Nairobi. Moi University also introduced medical school, and Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital was set up precisely to enable us to train the doctors from Moi University in a practical manner. So as Senator Sifuna puts it, it is a matter of common sense. It is a matter that we should not belabor. And I think the head of the parastatal, the head of the university, the Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital needs possibly to step aside. If he can actually preside, he or she can be presiding over a policy decision that can deny the university the use of that facility. What they are actually doing is churning into the labor market a team of doctors and other medical personnel who are not well trained because they are denying them this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I think the need for the country to have properly qualified and taught medical personnel is bigger than having so and so or who the other person as the chair or the CEO of that teaching and referral hospital. So I wish to ask that the committee look into that policy. If it is a policy that was made by the board of Kenyatta Teaching and Referral Hospital, that board should actually be dissolved so that we can have a board that understands why that facility was set up and to understand that that is a public facility that must deliver as was intended. Mr. Speaker, if I am not wrong, I think Kenyatta National Hospital may very well be registered as a parastatal. It is the Moi referral facility may also be registered as a parastatal. So the problem may not be per se that it is registered as a parastatal. I think the problem is that those who are running that facility have got it into their head that the facility is theirs. And they think that they can actually block away the primary reason why that facility was set up. So I wish to urge that the Senate fast tracks the dealing into this matter. I understand we don't have funds to do activities. This one is urgent because we have doctors and nurses to be taught. I suggest you find some money from wherever you find it for this committee to immediately engage and look into this issue and do what it requires. I suggest those in government move fast. Gerard K. loves to pull weight about being in government. You might even want to get an executive order done so that this issue is resolved once and for all. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this petition by Kenyatta University students on the use of Kenyatta University Teaching, Research and Referral Hospital. Mr. Speaker, just as my colleague senators have said, it is extremely disturbing for the board of the hospital to lock out students from Kenyatta University from using the facility for training. Mr. Speaker, how on earth do you explain students from Kenyatta University traveling all the way to Kiambu, level 4 facility, that is not well-resourced, like Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital, to use it for training, while leaving a whole facility within their institution to go and seek other facilities outside the university? Mr. Speaker, I think there is an act of gross misconduct on those who made the decision to actually remove the hospital from the university. Looking at the structure and the inception of that facility, Mr. Speaker, it was the university's initiative to actually design, build, and develop a research, teaching, and referral hospital for purposes of training. Mr. Speaker, it is even more surprising that the board of the hospital can actually decide to outsource lecture halls that were meant for training, laboratories that were meant for training, lecture halls that were meant for training, just to collect rent. How desperate is this hospital to raise revenue to the extent of leasing out laboratories, leasing out lecture halls, so that students can miss that opportunity? Mr. Speaker, medical schools undergo regular inspections to make sure that the quality of training that is being given to these doctors meets the national and international standard for doctors to qualify. The training of these students is at risk of being discontinued if inspections are carried out and found that their training facilities or whatever they're using for training doesn't meet the set standards that are meant for training doctors. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this is an urgent matter, and I think the committee where the matter will be referred to, Mr. Speaker, will benefit a lot from what National Assembly. I'm also surprised that this is a matter that had already been canvassed at the National Assembly
but it looks like the ministry never bothered to take any action. Mr. Speaker, I've read parts of this petition, and it is even also more surprising that even the Vice Chancellor of that university does not sit in the board of that hospital. How do we have a facility within a facility and the owners of the facility are not allowed to even participate in the process? Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues have said, there are things that are common sense, but I think these days common sense is no longer common sense. We just have to be decisive as a house in handling this matter. And I think as Senate being the upper house, I think we have a responsibility of restoring common sense in this country. And this is one matter that we have to take seriously and demonstrate to the nation that we have common sense in this Senate so that these students can get opportunity to train in a facility consumerate to where other student doctors are being trained in this country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I therefore support this petition. And as the committee will look at this, we are also asking that they also look at those who are involved in the decision so that appropriate action is also taken to deter others who might in future want to engage in such acts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this petition.
Senator Oburu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also want to add my voice to those who have spoken on this petition before. Mr. Speaker, it is very sad that this matter is taking too long when, in my view, Mr. Speaker, this should have been done very, very long time ago, because if it was already canvassed in the National Assembly and it is still coming to the Senate more than a year later, Mr. Speaker, this is something which means there is some laxity somewhere. And I hope that Honorable Chariot there and Cherargei, who is always very fast, please, instead of increasing prices of things very fast like fuel and so on, take up this matter. Take up this matter and deal with it before it takes too long. Students are suffering. And you know it, that in Eldoret, that is where all our people, even from Bondo, from everywhere, that's where they go. We go to Eldoret, the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. That is the best hospital in the whole of the Western region. This is because it is attached to the university, which is doing research, and they are also using their expertise and from the professors there, and the students who are learning and also helping to work there. So actually it is another very big advantage for an hospital or for a university, for an hospital to be attached to a university. So Mr. Speaker, I think this is something which we should take very seriously. It is something which I think more of the other side, please help us so that this matter does not take too long being passed here, taken to committee, taken to what, and yet it is something which is a simple policy, which you should just change, revoke that gazettement of that parastatal there, and let the hospital be attached to the university, the way other hospitals, even the Kenyatta National Hospital here, is attached to, together with the University of Nairobi, and it is working very well. And Mr. Speaker, I really get surprised that these days, these hospitals, which are supposed to be, public hospitals, have become much, much worse than private hospitals. People prefer to go to private hospitals. But Mr. Speaker, during colonial times, public institutions like hospitals, public hospitals were functioning much better than private hospitals. And people were going to public hospitals instead of the private hospitals. But now, these days, if you are going to public hospital, people say, but in the how could colonialists be better than us? Mr. Speaker, this is something which is really surprising. Even public schools used to be better than private schools. Mr. Speaker, there is something wrong which we have to look at. I think in those days, if you went to, it was called King George VI Hospital, it was much better than these private hospitals, like Nairobi Hospital. Now people have to go to private hospitals. And I hope these university hospitals will take the lead to help us to come back, to make public hospitals better than private hospitals, like the Eldoret one is doing. It is already taking a lead. And let this one also at Kenyatta serve students and also serve members of the public as efficiently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, the 30 minutes period meant for intervention is well spent, and therefore pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, the petition is hereby committed to the Standing Committee on Health for its consideration. In terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioners by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Honorable Senators, before we move to the second petition, I have this communication to make. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting teachers and students from Albright Junior School, Nairobi County. The group comprises 3 teachers and 12 students from the Journalism Club who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate, on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow the Senator for Nairobi just 1 minute to make very brief welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me opportunity to welcome the students of Albright to the Senate. And on behalf of my colleagues and on behalf of the entire House, to wish them a fruitful visit of the Senate. You've said that they are members of the Journalism Club. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we have had conversations in my office following a request that came from one of the schools, Huruma Girls, to support the journalism clubs in public schools in Nairobi. And as I speak today, we are at a very advanced stage with one of the leading global manufacturers of audiovisual equipment to actually support drama and communication clubs, art clubs in many of the schools in Nairobi. I am sure that if the teachers of Albright were to say the right things, there would be no problem for me including them in this program, although it was targeted at public schools, so that we are able to grow the talent in the school and hope that we can have very serious future journalists, news reporters, and all the others from this particular school. Mr. Speaker, as they might understand, the press, journalism, are one of the 4 pillars of democracy, Mr. Speaker, and that we need them. We need to see new practitioners in journalism. That is an essential cog in protection of our democracy every day, because it shines light on everything that we do, especially as elected leaders here. Even as we are in this chamber, you can see this is the parliamentary broadcast service, so that everything we say here is actually seen by the citizens out there. And you can confirm, as citizens of Embakasi, that the things that I am saying here are the things that you've sent me. So I want to thank them for this visit, and I wish them a successful visit, and I hope that we will be seeing some big names in media coming from Albright. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The second petition is by Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A petition to the Senate by President of Kitoka concerning illegal demolition of the house by Kenya Power and Lighting Company in Choka, Miango area. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 232(1)B, I hereby present to the Senate a petition submitted by residents of Choka, Miango area who are citizens of Kenya, citizen of the Republic of Kenya, and resident of Nairobi County. As you are aware, under Article 119, Section 1 of the Constitution, I quote, every person has a right to a petition Parliament to consider any matters within its authority, including enacting, amending, repealing any legislation. Mr. Speaker, the silence issue raised in this petition are as follows: that on 19th April 2019, Kenya Power and Lighting demolished houses in Choka, Mihango area of Embakasi East constituency and argues that the houses were in the Power Way Leave corridor. Mr. Speaker, that through multi-sectorial agency, consultative committee comprised of NEMA, KURA, NCA, WRA, Nairobi, KPLC, Kenya Railways, Nairobi City County Government, National Police Services, KAA, NYS, NDMU, and other agencies, KPLC demolished homes of residents and therefore subjecting them to emotional torture, stress, ridicule, and embarrassment. Mr. Speaker, that despite the President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, suspend the notice of demolition, which was due on 24 December 2018, KPLC ignored the presidential order and proceed to demolish their properties. That the residents were the legal properties of the residents were the legal properties of the plot at Injiru Mihango off Kagundu Road in Nairobi County. At no point did the KPLC communicated with the residents to resolve any issues of claimed encroachment to the Power Way Leave corridor. Mr. Speaker, as a result of illegal demolitions, nearly 500 families were rendered homeless, with children forced to close the schools earlier because their schools and the residents has been destroyed. Some residents also lost their livelihood since their business has been demolished. It is also worthy noting that one of the residents committed suicide as a result of frustration, trauma, and shock created by illegal demolitions. Mr. Speaker, that after completing a due diligence search at the survey of Kenya, the homeowners determined that KPLC did not possess the dispute land. As a result, demolitions were carried out in a bad faith, in violation of the residents' the fundamental right to housing and in contraventions of the country's Vision 2020-2030 of affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, that following demolitions, KPLC beaconned the area, which was afterthought and complete violation of enacted regulations. The disputed plot has since remained vacant, with possibility of being sold to the third party to the pursuit of demolition victims who have experienced emotional losses and emotional torments, worry, and disgrace. Mr. Speaker, the issue presented in this petition has been raised with relevant bodies but have not been adequately addressed. Mr. Speaker, none of the issues raised in these petitions are pending before any court of law, constitutionally, or any other legal body. Mr. Speaker, consequently, the petitioners pray that Senate investigate this matter with a view of ensuring that the victims are resettled and adequately compensated by KPLC. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I will allow Senator Wakili Sigei to present his petition. Thereafter, I will allow interventions on both petitions so that we save on time. Senator Sigei.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for also granting me the opportunity to present the petition that I have been authorized by a resident and citizen of this country to present it on his behalf, pursuant to Standing Order 232 of this Senate. Mr. Speaker, the petition respectfully states that Kenya Breweries Limited is one of the oldest public listed companies in Kenya, having been established in the year 1922, that there has been a controversial majority acquisition of East African Breweries by Guinness PLC in 2000, which was strongly resisted by the people of the Republic of Kenya through the Parliament, that despite having knowledge of the dealings of the Capital Markets Authority, Kenya Revenue Authority, the National Treasury, and East African Breweries Limited have since not acted so as to correct or stop the fraudulent activities relating to shareholding and the illegal acquisitions. To that effect, some of the backlash Guinness PLC made a pledge to cede back most of the acquired shares to Kenyans in due course. That incomplete and total betrayal of this undertaking, Diageo PLC has now purported to acquire additional 15% shares in EABL, that the undertaking by Guinness PLC to cede back shares is actionable through a class action, that the recent acquisition of the extra 15% shares in EABL is a fraud upon the people of Kenya, as the shares are being acquired for an onward transfer to a new buyer at a much higher value for the benefit of the shareholders and to the detriment of Kenyan shareholders who will be denied the benefit of the higher price that will onward be obtained. An onward sale has been agreed with another company, and the purpose and purchase of the additional 15% shares is meant to assure the purchaser of a controlling stake in EABL after the onward sale. That the sale of the shares has been prompted by the desire by the fraudulent purchaser to evade huge tax liabilities that has been hiding through massive processes within the systems. That Kenya Breweries Limited, when it was locally owned, possessed massive real estate in Kenya that comprised staff houses, staff complexes, godowns and warehouses, factories and other assets, and had employed over 6,000 Kenyans. That EABL has corruptly disposed of all these properties and repatriated the sale proceeds, and is now but a mere shell, employing a paltry 600 employees. That having sold all these properties, the new scheme is to quickly progress the sale and block the benefit that the Kenyans ought to have benefited. That the overall impact of these continued contrived corporate actions is a serious betrayal of the interest of the people of Kenya, and a parliamentary hearing is urgently required to interrogate these events and to secure the public interest of Kenya and its people. That the petitioner has made efforts to have this matter addressed to the relevant authorities, all of which have been unsuccessful, and that this matter is confirmed not to be pending before any court of law or any constitutional body. Herefore, your humble petitioner prays that the Senate investigates with a view to recommending amendments to the CMA Act to cushion the shareholders from such future manipulations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarifications on the two petitions for not more than 30 minutes. The Honorable Cheranke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support the petition by Senator Sheikh Omar for, on behalf of Mihango residents, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you look under Article 40 on protection to right to property and under Article 43 on adequate housing, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is very unfortunate that Kenya Power and Lighting Company went ahead with demolitions without proper recourse of the law. And even if they wanted to acquire that part of the property, Mr. Speaker, they should have at least ensured that the people are compensated, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you remember during lockdown and COVID, the Ruai residents that were affected in the middle of lockdown. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I continue to insist that we have a new form of evictees. We used to hear about forest evictees. We used to hear about political evictees. Mr. Speaker, there is new crop of evictees called infrastructural evictees, especially in our cities and our towns, Mr. Speaker, where an entity wakes up in the morning, they demolish the kiosks, they demolish people's houses. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think the great people of Mihango who lost their houses, Mr. Speaker, somebody must be held accountable, Mr. Speaker, because if they did violate the law, then it is very unfortunate that those people of Mihango residents here in Embakasi East, Mr. Speaker, in Nairobi City continues. Mr. Speaker, second and finally, I think it has reached a point where as a parliament, we must come up with the proper legislative intervention to guide demolitions, Mr. Speaker, be it the kiosks, be it the houses, either for the expansion of road reserves, Mr. Speaker, either for compulsory acquisition. We must have a structural legal framework, Mr. Speaker, because what happens nowadays, somebody rushes to court, they obtain a court order, they talk to the OCS and OCPD, they facilitate some young men here and there, facilitate the police, you are evicted without the proper legal recourse of the law, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I commend Senator Sheikh Omar for bringing this petition before the House. I hope the great people of Mihango, I've had, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I've had one of your speaker's panel's member alluding on the floor of the House that there is no money. I don't know whether it is above you to know whether the Senate or Parliament has money, but that is a story for another day. I hope we can, this since Mihango, Mr. Speaker, is a walking distance, and I know Senator Sifuna, in the last month, we used to see him rushing like a bullet across the streets of Nairobi. He can be able to lead us to Mihango because, you know, he has been running here and there, Mr. Speaker, so that it becomes easy. But I want, Mr. Speaker, my senior youth and my friend Senator Oburu acknowledges there is government in place, and I hope Senator Sifuna is borrowing such Solomonic wisdom from Senator Oburu, who is a very senior citizen in this republic, Mr. Speaker. So with those very, very remarks, I support this petition and hope we shall have a policy and legislative intervention as the outcome of policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to comment on the petition on eviction and say that when evictions happen, sometimes they are fraudulent evictions. People go to court, they obtain a judgment ex parte or a ruling, and at times pretend that they can evict, and if you are not quick enough, the events end up being very sadistic, and again, by the time you go back to court, you have already been overtaken by the situation. And Mr. Speaker, this is something the Senate should take very seriously, because the government is talking about housing, yet houses which are constructed, including a school, are demolished and the community is left helplessly. There are a section of civil servants who are very malicious. Despite the matter be explained to then head of state and him giving direction that they hold on while they process to know whether the wayleave is real or not. Because you see, this is a matter of lands, and it can be verified, and there can be wrong allocations. The question is, after Kenya Power took over these land. What is there in that land today? Have they done developments which are designed? Is it for the benefit of community? Or some other individuals have now gone on to grab the same land and end up owning it? Mr. Speaker, this has been an experience not only in this particular place, but many other places. People are evicted without a proper notice. There must always be a notice before eviction, and there must be proper court orders when necessary. And the police, which is near there, should also be able to protect such properties. When residents report, they have the capacity to stop before anybody goes on to disturb the peace of peace-loving Kenyans. And the damage caused then is very enormous. I'm surprised that eventually the matter has ended up in the Senate. But why have these human rights organizations not taken action for all these years? Why have they not been in the court? Why has the government also not taken action to restore? I think it's a matter Senate can resolve. It is within its mandate. And Mr. Speaker, we really look forward to assist the committee dealing with it to make sure that justice is done to these people. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Tabitha Mutenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to rise and support Senator Mariam on the petition at Mihango. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to state that Mihango is actually my voting place. That's where I vote, in Embakasi East, more precise, Mihango Primary. So it's an area I'm very familiar with. These issues of residents being, or owners being evicted from residence is not new in this particular area, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy that she has put this across, because it is very wrong for anybody, as much as it's the government organization, to evict families, hence loss of property and loss of lives for these people. Mr. Speaker, allow me to agree that March 2018, on the 15th, KPLC launched what we call Ondokea Laini. This was to ensure that people who are living under the way-leaves get out of these particular areas, Mr. Speaker. Then we ask, Mr. Speaker, why do we have way-leaves under Kenya Power? These particular areas assist Kenya Power to be able to maintain their equipment at given particular different moments, depending on the situation of the power, to be able to inspect and repair their equipments. But in the event that families are in a particular area, Mr. Speaker, it becomes very sad on the modalities and the processes that institutions and government institutions then use to put off families in these particular moments, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this reminds me that last week in an area called California, people were evicted at 2 a.m. in the escort of police officers in this country, where we have families in these particular homes living. The issue, back to the issue of Mihango, Mr. Speaker, as I support Senator Mariam on this is a matter I would request, Mr. Speaker, that the committee you'll assign to look into, to ensure the stakeholders or Kenya Power as a company also states and gives full report on the losses that have been undertaken. Mr. Speaker, yes, allow me to agree that cartels have also been involved during these particular moments of also misleading our Kenyans in buying land and property in the wrong destinations, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to say that it is the high time Kenyans, especially in our good county, Nairobi County that we represent, where people buy land that is not genuine land. There are cases, yes, Mr. Speaker, that people have bought land under the way-leave. either knowingly or unknowingly, Mr. Speaker. And then this has led to these particular situations that you see, then that we bring on the floor. But still, that does not indicate that people should lose their lives, should lose their property. There are better ways of Kenya Power coming in, and hence that's why they set the operation that is called Ondokea Laini operation. They came and realized that this is happening. And so there are better ways Kenya Power can be able to deal with these issues so as to minimize the cases that are in place. In those few remarks, I do support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Siango.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia petition ya Senator Mariam kuhusu kuondolewa na kufunjwa manyumba kwa wakaazi wa Chokaa, Miang'o. Bwana Spika, niseme kwamba hii inaonyesha utepetepe ya wafanyikazi wa kampuni tofauti tofauti. Kwa sababu wakati haya manyumba yalikuwa yakijengwa, walikuwa wapi? Wanaohusika kama ni planning ama ni authorize nyumba zijengwe, walikuwa wapi? Ndiposa wananchi wanunue shamba, wajenge manyumba, waishi ndani, na kama ni mzee ako na bibi, ako na watoto, ako na vitu zake za dhamana ambazo amenunua na ameweka kwa nyumba, alafu anaamkia asubuhi moja ameondolewa, hana nyumba na ajui aende wapi. Niseme Bwana Spika, niruhusu niseme kwamba kampuni ya stima nchini Kenya imeleta machozi mingi sana kwa Wakenya, kwa sababu kufunja nyumba, kubomoa nyumba bila mpangilio, bila idhini ya kwamba watafanya hayo siku inayokusudiwa, tarehe inayokusudiwa, hii ni kuumiza na kuhujumu hata haki ya Wakenya. Kwa hivyo ni makosa kabisa. Na niseme Bwana Spika kwamba ni kama Wanakenya wametupa hutu nje ya dirisha. Wanapofanya mambo hawafikirii ile hutu kwamba huyu ni binadamu kama mimi. Ninaetesa, kesho inaweza kuwa ni mimi. Nitaenda wapi? Kama ingekuwa hao wamefanywa hayo, wenyewe wangefanya nini? Kwa hivyo ni vizuri kuwa na hutu, hata kama ni kutii sheria, hata kama ni kuhakikisha sheria imefuatwa, hata kama ni kufanya jambo lolote. Ningeomba ikuwe ni kampuni ya stima, ikuwe ni watu wa mjengo, ikuwe ni watu wa barabara, wakati wanaokabiliana na watu ambao wanadhaniwa kufunja sheria, wakuwe na utu. Jambo lingine, Bwana Spika, nchini Kenya na haswa Nairobi, tunajua kwamba watu wanauziwa mashamba mara 2, mara 3. Unaona mtu kwa nia nzuri ananunua shamba, lakini amepewa makaratasi na anaona amenunua, baada ya miezi 2, miezi 6, mwingine ameuziwa ile shamba na anaenda ananunua, mwishowe kuna mmoja atalia ama wote waumie. Na tena wengine wanatumia makaratasi ambao gushi, makaratasi ngushi. Na unapewa makaratasi ukidhani umetumia, pesa yako imeenda, alafu unabaki pale ukihangaika. Kwa hiyo hayo mambo yote iangaliliwe vizuri. Ningeomba kama ni kamati ya ardhi ama wanaohusika kwa petition hii mahali itaingia, wachukue hatua inaostahili. Kama ni kuchunguza kila jambo, lifanywe vizuri, na ambao wale watapoteza mali yao wakuwe compensated kwa sababu ni wapewe walipwe rifaa. Asante sana Bwana Spika, naunga mkono.
Senator Siango, ni kulipwa ridhaa, sio vifaa. Senator Joyce.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Allow me also to support the the statement that has been brought by my colleague, Honorable Mariam. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, as it has been said by a number of colleagues, that these are issues that are being caused majorly by the relevant offices. Right now, Honorable Speaker, we have a number of IDP camps. We have a number of displaced persons. And these are people who have their rightful documentations, and they are supposed to be given protection by the same government. But I want to say this is something that has been affecting the citizens. This is something that has happened, I can say, since independence. The issues of land, the issues of displacement has been an issue that has been affecting this country. I want to say this, Honorable Speaker, that the issues that has been raised by my colleague are very serious issues that I think the relevant committee will come out with a resolution that will be able to assist the family to get their dues. And it will also act as a lesson to those who are going to face the same challenge, Honorable Speaker. These are issues that we've been discussing year in, year out. And I want to say that at any time, as an official or an officer from the government or the relevant ministries have been made liable for these mistakes. Remember, Honorable Speaker, the reason why I was bringing the issues of IDPs is because you find a number of them. They have legal document that has been given by the government, the title deeds, but still they are on the streets, being evicted by the same government. I can talk of the previous government because I have been a member of the National Assembly by then, when some people were evicted in a place where the government have put up schools. They have the chiefs, they have the elected leaders, and still they allege that they are there illegally. Yet they have the legal documents that have been given by the same government. To an extent, as we speak, Honorable Speaker, a number of their children are still running in the streets. They don't have homes. They are in camps. You have a title deed, but you have been evicted from your land and you are in a camp. Honorable Speaker, I want to believe that the government in place right now is going to address these issues. And I want to also say, Honorable Speaker, to an extent that at least we will not witness this anymore. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, I just want to say that I support the statement, and I urge the relevant committee or to get the facts and even address this issue across, because I believe that is not the only issue, that is not the only case that has been brought forward, but we have a number of them, Honorable Speaker. So I just want to say that I support. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Mazayo. I thought I called Senator Mazayo.
Oh, sorry.
If Senator Mazayo wishes to...
Today I'm not. Asante Bwana Spika. Sijui kama jina langu sasa siku hizi liko kama la Kimasai ama liko namna gani, lakini mimi siketi. Bwana Spika, asante sana. Bwana Spika, kama kuna wakati wowote ambao familia huwa zinateseka, ni wakati wa kufurushwa kiholela ama kufurushwa katika makaazi wanayokaa. Kama kuna uchungu ambao watu wanasema uchungu wa mwana ujuaye ni mama, lakini ikifika kwamba jamii yote huwa inajua ni uchungu wa kuhamishwa kutoka pale mahali mnaita nyumbani, alafu sasa hamna pa kwenda. Bwana Spika, wakazi wa Chokaa ni wakazi ambao ni wa Kenya na wanaishi katika hicho kijiji, na ni bahati ya kwamba hawakuchagua, lakini hayo ndio makao yao. Jambo la kusikitisha leo kuona ya kwamba Kenya baada ya miaka 60 tunaweza kuchukua na kuweza kufurusha Wakenya wengine kutoka sehemu wanazoziita nyumbani, yaani makazi ya kwao, na kuwa katika barabara, hawajui waende mbele waende nyuma. Utendaji kazi kama huu wa Power and Lighting kufanya kitendo kama hichi, Bwana Spika, ni cha kukemewa zaidi. Kuna watoto wa skuli, kuna kina mama, kuna wagonjwa, kuna jamii ambazo tunaishi nazo pia ndani ya nyumba ambao ni jamii zetu, na hao ndio hupata tabu zaidi. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha leo ikiwa hatua kama hii itafanywa, na hali kulikuwa na oda ya rais akisema kwamba mahali kama hapa pasivunjwe ama wasiwezi kuhamishwa. Hivi leo wako nje, hatujui watakao walipa ni kina nani. Watoto wa skuli hawajui wakae nje wafanye namna gani, waende skuli alafu watarudi wapi, hawajui wataenda wapi. Wale wagonjwa kama hawako hospitalini ama wataweza kujikimu namna gani, ni hali ya mateso ambayo iko katika hivi sasa katika kule kwa chokaa. Kwa hiyo nataka kumuunga mkono dadangu kwa kuleta hii petition hapa, na kwamba kamati ambayo itaweza kuchaguliwa, ile kamati yetu ya lands, iweze kuangalia ya kwamba hawa watu ambao wamefurushwa katika nyumba zao ama hawa watu ambao hawako katika makao yao. Bwana Spika, tunaunga mkono petition hii tukisema ya kwamba haki itendeke na kila Mkenya awe anaweza kuishi mahali anapopaita kwao. Hili jambo hili, Bwana Spika, linatendeka sana, hususan katika Kilifi. Kilifi County tulikuwa tunafikiria ni sisi peke yake, kwa sababu tunasema ukiona cha mwenzako chanyolewa chako anza kutia maji. Sasa tunaona hii tabia imeanza kuja huku juu. Hatujui itakuja kiasi gani, lakini tunasema tu ya kwamba ingekuwa bora tabia kama hizi ambazo watu wanaweza kufurushwa, hususan na makampuni kama Kenya Power ambalo ni shirika la serikali, liweze kuzingatia heshima kwanza, na waweze kuona wale wakubwa wanaweza kuongea, na alafu waangalie jinsia wanaweza kuchukua hawa watu ama wakawaahidi hawa watu watawapeleka mahali gani kabla ya kuwafurusha na matingatinga na kuwavunjia nyumba zao na maana ni Wakenya wenzetu.
What is your point of order?
Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, Bwana Spika, asante sana.
Senator Mazayo, kindly yield.
Nishamaliza Bwana Spika.
Just have your seat, Senator Mazayo. Senator Kinyua, what is your point of order?
Bwana Spika, kulingana na hoja ya nidhamu ya 105, amesema ya kwamba uchungu wa mwana aujuae ni mama. Bwana Spika, mimi nimeketi hapa nikiwa nashindwa kwa sababu uchungu wa mwana aujuae mzazi. Mzazi anaweza kuwa ni mme, ni mke. Kwa hivyo yeye kusema uchungu wa mwana aujuae ni mama, mimi nimebaki nachanganyikiwa Bwana Spika. Hiyo tu ndio nilitaka aweze kutuelezea Bwana Spika.
Senator Kenyua, I overrule that. It doesn't warrant being called a point of order. If you have a problem with language, I think you better go to a language class and not stand on a point of order. Senator Aaron Chiriot.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't wish to be drawn to the previous utterances, but just to say that as fathers in this house, we shall revisit at the right time. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, these are two very important petitions that have been brought before the House. First is a petition by Senator Mariam Sheikh on behalf of Mihango residents. Mr. Speaker, I know Mihango very well. I grew up not very far from there, and perhaps played football as a young kid, very close to where Senator Mariam is speaking about. And to be in this house this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, it will be gross abuse of the premium position of privilege that I have as a member of parliament to just rant and say this is wrong, shouldn't have happened, and expect that things remain the same. Mr. Speaker, those that have been in this house, and including everybody that's here this afternoon, know that on more than one occasion, we have considered petitions on citizens that have been evicted from various properties. Many times, countless times, I have lost count. And we keep on sharing our rage. Then we go wash our hands, eat mandazi, and go home. That's not what we are paid to do as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. It will be great dereliction of duty if the committee responsible, the one that shall handle this petition, shall go, visit, listen to the cries of the residents, and just come back to this house with a report left out to gather dust in this house. I propose, Mr. Speaker, that this committee goes beyond the call of duty to not only just establish the truth on these residents, perhaps if KPLC will be found to be at fault, Mr. Speaker, first of all, impose a fine, and we have that responsibility. It's possible. We can give such directions, Mr. Speaker, and propose that they seek that the citizens actually be compensated. But over and above, Mr. Speaker, the most important thing is that can we come up with legislation, Mr. Speaker, on how to carry out evictions in this country, Mr. Speaker. We should go beyond just the collective rage as a house every other afternoon saying this was not done in a proper way. I believe that we can come up with a legislation that says even where there arises a dispute in a land between two parties, that this is a procedure that the police are supposed to follow. So that every other time we don't hear these stories that we keep on hearing that in the dead of the night, people showed up in trucks, blah, 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 and the kind of things that we hear each and every other afternoon, Mr. Speaker. We need to bury that practice this session of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the committee that will be tasked with handling this petition, Mr. Speaker, will do us great justice, and they'll cover us with dignity as a House, Mr. Speaker, if they come back to us with a legislative proposal on evictions of members of the public on any disputed property, Mr. Speaker, so that we put it to an end. This does not require much thought to it, but lay out a procedure. I don't know which statute or law they will are likely to amend, public order or whatever, Mr. Speaker, but at least guide the country. It is clear that the reason why these violations continue to happen so many times, Mr. Speaker, is for want of good laws, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I believe that that will be good justice so that we never sit here on another afternoon, Mr. Speaker, to just lament and go and have mandazi and go home, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, is a very interesting petition by Senator Hilary Sigei, which seems to have escaped the notice or the attention of many senators, because I've listened to most of my colleagues and they've only commented on the petition about evictions by KPLC. This is an interesting one, Mr. Speaker. You do know, Mr. Speaker, that global conglomerates are increasingly facing scrutiny, either by parliaments or regulatory bodies in the countries within which they operate in, Mr. Speaker, for various malpractices, either in their accounting reporting or even in breach of data, and so many foul things that these institutions are found, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, or various breaches of the law, Mr. Speaker, that these multinationals are found to be in breach of, Mr. Speaker. You do know, Mr. Speaker, that presently in the European Parliament, there is a big fight between the Irish data regulator and Meta, the parent company that owns Facebook. And they have been fined over $1 billion just for breach of data, Mr. Speaker, for transferring data from European residents back to United States, Mr. Speaker. It points to the fact that citizens, regulatory bodies, parliaments are increasingly becoming aware to the evil practices of many of these multinationals that operate in countries other than their origin with very little regard to the rule of law. I know this is a practice. It's not just EABL, as is being mentioned in this petition, Mr. Speaker. I know for a fact, when I read the tax records of KRA, Mr. Speaker, and you read about leading taxpayers, for example, you know that you'll find very small eco-lodges in Narok are paying more taxes than the people that run the huge multinational plantations back in Kericho, Mr. Speaker. It cannot make sense. It doesn't make sense. But because of exactly the same situation that is being described in that particular petition, Mr. Speaker, KRA are not able, Mr. Speaker, to follow through and ensure that the people pay, that these institutions pay the taxes that are due of them, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, you know, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, because of the pettiness of the conversation around the finance bill of 2023, very important snippets and proposals that have come through after many years of conversations about what to do with such companies are missing out. In the finance bill of 2023, Mr. Speaker, you will find a repatriation tax proposal where it is now being proposed for these companies that repatriate profits out of Kenya that they first pay a local tax within their country where they apply their trade and practice. Because we pay police officers, we train their employees, they use our roads to run their trade, then they go and do their books in London and in all these other posh capitals of the world, paying very little taxes to this country, Mr. Speaker. I hope at least in the fullness of time, when the dust settles and we have an adult conversation about the proposals that are in the finance bill of 2023, at least that shall not be one of the proposals that will fall down, Mr. Speaker, because I know National Assembly, it's not the first time that this is being proposed, but you know, unfortunately, as a House, we do not have the powers to legislate on tax matters, Mr. Speaker, but at least we have a platform and the voice to speak on these particular issues. Therefore, we'll be watching with keen attention the proposals that will come from whichever committee will handle that petition on the practices of EABL, Mr. Speaker, that we are being invited to listen and learn from that citizen that has petitioned this House, Mr. Speaker. It's of great interest, Mr. Speaker, to note that while this citizen had the choice to take this petition either to the National Assembly or the Senate, they brought it here to the Senate. Maybe there's something they know about us as a House. Let us not kill the hopes that they have about us as a House, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this petition of my dear sister, Senator Mariam. Mr. Speaker, one of my biggest problems with Kenya Power, and I'm in the Senate Energy Committee, is that the records of Kenya Power that their land is all mixed up. So it's very difficult to be able to tell whether these properties which were demonstrated, were demolished, were actually along the way live of Kenya Power. Hypothetically, Mr. Speaker, if indeed the properties were built illegally, I've read through the petition that there are various things that happened, that the former president issued an executive order, and I was just consulting with the senior counsel whether those executive orders lapse, and I was told that as soon as that president is gone, that executive order also dies. But in the interests of human beings, Kenyan citizens who reside in a particular area, why would it be so difficult for Kenya Power, for DCI or the DCC to be able to sit and discuss with the residents of the area and say, we will look for a suitable place for you to move, or at least they are given an opportunity to move. If indeed, Mr. Speaker, the issues which have been raised in this petition are accurate, because I've also noted that the residents went to court. And the last I checked is that if this matter was in court, then this House should not be entertaining it. So I'm a little bit perplexed, Mr. Speaker, because in the petition it says that the residents did go to court, and when they went to court, if you read number 6, it says that the resident filed 2 suits, and it names them there. And then it says that to stop the demolition of any forms of damages to the properties, but KPLC blatantly disregarded the said court orders issued on the 5th of April 2019 and 14th March 2019, respectively. Mr. Speaker, what I do not know, first of all, and maybe Senator Mariam can be able to clarify this, is whether this matter is still alive in court.
Senator Ledama just have you said. That is a very valid concern. We cannot commit a petition whose subject matter is live in court. So, Senator Mariam, you're the one who brought this petition on behalf of the residents. Kindly confirm to the House that there is no dispute pending, not just in court, but in any other forum where this matter is discussed.
Thank you, Speaker. Like I said when I am reading the petition, it is not live in the court.
What was the determination? What was the fate of the two suits that were filed by the residents?
It has been withdrawn.
Thank you. Proceed, Senator Ledama.
Fair enough, Mr. Speaker. The issues of subsidies are things which are of great concern to me. Because if a matter is live, but the way it appears is that there are orders. These orders do not cease to exist if they have not been complied with.
Dama, yes. I think Senator Miriam has said the suits were withdrawn.
No, Mr. Speaker, I'm okay with that. What I'm just saying is that I'm still grappling with the idea that a court order would be issued and a publicly traded company. You know, what people seem to forget is that Kenya Power is owned both by individuals. I've got some shares. I'm sure some residents here, it could be 2 or 3 shares you have, or 200. And even those residents who are evicted. And the government owns about 51%. But what I fail to understand is why we would, Kenya Power as a publicly traded
What is the
company.
point of order, Senator Cherangei? We need to conclude on this matter.
Mr. Speaker, I rise by your Speaker's rules, rule number 5 on dressing of the senator. This is unrelated. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you see the trouser that has been worn by Senator Gloria Orwoba, we give evolving
Senator Cherangei,
yes.
Allow Senator Ledama to conclude. You're supposed to rise on a point of order on the senator who is speaking.
Okay.
So let him conclude, and then you can prosecute your point of order. Conclude, Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me summarize, because I was really trying to prosecute on this matter, but because of time, I fully support this petition. And I do hope that by the time this matter is brought before the Energy Committee to look at the conduct of Kenya Power and Lighting, all those residents will be brought. Mr. Speaker, when you read that a resident committed suicide because they did not have a home to go to, when you read that houses were demolished even at night, when you read that the former president had issued an executive order to stop those demolitions, but no one respected them, then you begin to wonder if there's a quota of companies in this country that are above the law. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm of the opinion or the view that we may need to really look at our standing orders when it comes to the issue of petitions. My concern, as the reason as why I'm raising that issue, is that most of the time we will carry out this investigation, we'll call those people to come before us, and then what will we do? We will finally give Senator Mariam, who has come with the petition, the report. This is the report. Then do what? That is the biggest problem that I see, Mr. Speaker. I think since we do not have an implementation committee in the Senate, all committees are supposed to sort of like self-implement. But I think it's about time, as the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, for us to be seen as solving issues and to give confidence to citizens that whenever they bring a petition, we can actually give results. We may need to relook at our standing orders. We may need to think, how do we follow through? These are Kenyans who have a right to live in this country. Their rights have been violated. Kenya Power and Lighting have attempted. In fact, even in Narok, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, you'll find that they will go and they will say that these houses are built along the way live. When you follow, there's no way live. So those are the things that we need to follow. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward to investigating this petition. I hope you will commit it to the Energy Committee so that we can be able to follow through and ensure. And I want to assure the people of who are affected. These Kenyan citizens, there are about 10 of them, we will do everything possible to be able to make sure that if it is compensation, if it is your rights are respected. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, the petition by Honorable Mariam Sheikh Omar should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources with an option to co-opt the Energy Committee. In terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. As regards to the petition by Wakili Hilary Sigei, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration also. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization, and Tourism. In terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
The Majority Leader. What is your point of order, Senator Chirangei?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise pursuant to Speaker's Rules number 5 on the dressing of senators in the House, Mr. Speaker. You know everything is evolving. Mr. Speaker, if you see the trouser that has been worn by our champion against administration in the country, our beloved Senator, Senator Gloria Onwoba, Mr. Speaker, sir, she has worn a trouser similar that when some of us go and wind down on Fridays, we see the DJ is wearing, Mr. Speaker. So I don't know whether it is in order, Mr. Speaker, because it looks like a leather, it looks like jeans, it looks like khaki. So we need to be clear, Mr. Speaker, because tomorrow I can wear a khaki and come to the House. As a senator, I don't know whether it will be acceptable or a jeans. So, Mr. Speaker, I needed guidance, and maybe you can direct the female sergeant at arms to look, because I can see Senator Murango is looking at it keenly. So we request that the female senator should be the one to look at that matter, Mr. Speaker. Stand guided.
Senator Charagay, from where I sit, I cannot be able to see Senator Gloria's trousers. I want to dispense of this matter. Let me see how Senator Gloria is dressed. Just walk. No. Have your seat, Senator Gloria. You are well dressed. Now, you see, no, you're okay. You just, so let us have the statement by, go to your standing order 96. Then I'll be able to assist you, Senator, then I'll be Senator Sifuna. You go to standing order 96, where you should prosecute to a point of order. Because this is a determination I was making as a chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of this Senate today, the 31st of May, the year of our Lord 2023. Being, Mr. Speaker, reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the year ended 30th of June of 1. Leighton Municipal Board for the year ended 30th of June 2020. Reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements for the year ended 30th June 2021 of the following: Leighton Municipal Board, Garissa Municipal Board, Kakamega County Investment Development Agency Limited. And Mr. Speaker, reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements for the year ended 30th of June of the following: Isiolo Staff Mortgage Scheme Fund, Turkana County Emergency Fund, Nithi Water and Sanitation Company Limited, and Mr. Speaker, the receiver of revenue statements, County Government of Murang'a, West Pokot County Assembly Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund, Embu Water and Sanitation Company Limited, County Revenue Fund for Siaya County Government, Tana River County Water Bursary Fund, Wajir County Disaster Management Fund, Iten Tambach Water and Sanitation Company Limited, County Assembly of Laikipia Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme for Staff, Laikipia County Education Bursary Fund, County Executive of Kisumu, Kisumu County Government Revenue Fund, County Assembly of Kisumu, Samburu County Persons Living with Disability Fund, Samburu Water and Sanitation Company Limited, County Executive of Trans Nzoia, County Assembly of Trans Nzoia, Trans Nzoia County Public Service Board, Trans Nzoia Public Service, County Revenue Fund for Trans Nzoia County Government, County Revenue Fund for Vihiga County Government, Climate Change Fund for Vihiga County Government, Vihiga County Trade and Enterprise Fund, Vihiga County Facility Improvement Fund, Vihiga County Sports Fund, Lamu County Youth Development Fund, Lamu County Bursary and Scholarship Fund, Lamu County Disability Fund, County Executive of Kericho, Kericho County Executive Staff Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund, Kericho County Executive Mortgage Staff Fund, Mr. Speaker, County Assembly of Kericho, County Revenue Fund, County Government of Kericho, Kericho County Alcoholic Drinks Control Fund, and Mr. Speaker, sir, last but not least, Kericho County Agricultural Development Fund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do lay the papers.
Next order. Yes, what is the point of order, Senator Sifuna?
Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 237 on the business we just transacted on comments on petitions. My reading of that standing order is that when the Speaker allows comments, the comments are in relation to a petition. That is singular. So, Mr. Speaker, when there are two petitions that are then rolled into one, the Speaker should be at least clear on how much time he's allocating every petition, because, Mr. Speaker, I feel that when a petition is presented by a member of another delegation, touching on the delegation, like say Nairobi, you have just been discussing Nairobi. I have interacted with this matter day in, day out. Then for me not to get an opportunity to speak on it because time has been fixed and then it is attached to both petitions, Mr. Speaker, I feel it's unfair. So prior to committal of the petitions to the committee, it would be nice when the Speaker rolls two petitions into one for comments by members to specify whether that 30 minutes is for both petitions or in accordance with 237, each petition is going to get 30 minutes. That was my point of order, Mr. Speaker, and I couldn't raise it when the Speaker was on the floor. These are some of the challenges we are experiencing with the standing orders as senators trying to transact business in this House. I thank you.
Senator Sifuna, are you saying there is no Speaker now in this House? Because you said you could not raise your point of order, when the speaker was chairing.
Mr. Speaker, I think one of the tools of debate that has been demonized in this House is a point of order. So when you hear somebody shouting point of order, you just think it is something negative. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't do it when, what term do I use? When the substantive speaker was now committing the petitions to the committee. When I tried to raise it when you had called the next order, it was also problematic because you asked me to wait for the minority whip to finish. And by that time, matters have already progressed.
No problem.
What I am saying is that there is a speaker on the seat. I can see you, Mr. Speaker, very well. I can see you. So maybe we get guidance on that as members of the speakers panel.
Guidance.
Thank you. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Accordingly. Senator Gloria, you know, once and dispense of a matter. What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to air.
But if it's on
Mr.
your
Speaker,
addressing,
it's,
that
no,
is already, it's already done.
Mr. Speaker, this issue is actually a pressing issue because even earlier today, we came ready for supplementary questions for the cabinet secretaries. And Mr. Speaker, some of us, it is like our dashboards are like hazards. They are just on, and we are not getting the opportunity to actually dispense.
Your point of order.
My point of order, Mr. Speaker, is that aside from the reference that Senator Sifuna is actually making on the book, is that there is an issue here on matters expressing ourselves in the House, Mr. Speaker, and it needs to be looked into, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Is that a point of order or what is it now? Next order. Senator Mboni Karori, I understand there are more papers that you have not read.
The chair of the committees.
Oh, no, not you. Chair Labor Committee, Labor and Social Welfare.
Yeah.
Chair, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 31st May 2023. Report of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the consideration of the persons with disability, Senate Bill number 7 of 2023. Secondly, report on the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the consideration of the Heritage and Museum Bill, Senate Bill number 8 of 2023. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. There are more papers for Chair Health.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 31st May 2023. Report on the Standing Committee on Health on the death of the late Maureen Onyango at Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital due to a late medical negligence. Report of the Standing Committee of Health on the circumstances that led to the death of the late Master Travis Minor at Kenyatta National Hospital. Report on the Standing Committee of Health on the death of the late Edward Otieno Onyango due to a late medical negligence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Thank you. Next order. If there are no other papers, there is? Okay. Chair Budget.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 31st of May, 2023. Report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2023, Senate Bill number 16 of 2023. I beg to lay. Thank you.
Thank you. I call for the next one.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Next one. Oh, you have a notice? Chair.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to give a notice of motion, adopt the report of the Standing Committee of Health on the death of the late Maureen Anyango at Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital due to a late medical negligence. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that the Senate adopts a report of the Standing Committee of Health on the death of the late Maureen Anyango at Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital due to a late medical negligence, laid on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, 31st May 2023. Mr. Speaker, I also want to give notice of motion and adopt the report of the Standing Committee of Health on the circumstances that led to the death of the late Master Travis Minor at Kenyatta National Hospital. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Health on the circumstances that led to the death of the late Master Travis Minor at Kenyatta National Hospital, laid on the table of the Senate Wednesday, May 31st, 2023. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the motion that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Health on the death of the late Edward Otieno Onyango due to a late medical negligence, laid on the table of the Senate Wednesday, 31st May 2023. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Let's get statements under Standing Order 53-1. Senator Mudigi, Alexander.
Senator Mudigi, Embu County. Request for statement on disparities in development in Embu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek statement from the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations regarding the conspicuous disparity in development within Embu County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the clear discrepancies in development levels among the sublocations of Embu County, considering that a small number of sublocations are significantly developed, while a vast majority remain in early marginalized. 3, state the total amount of funding that has been located to Embu County under the Equalization Fund since the inception of devolution and indicate how it has been utilized. And 3, state the measures in place, if any, to address the conspicuous intra-county inequalities promptly. Alexander Mudigi, Embu County.
Senator Mudigi, I understand that you are hosting Madaraka Day tomorrow and you are not inviting senators to your county.
Bwana Speaker, mimi ni senator wa Embu County ambaye alichaguliwa na wananchi. Embu County tuko na sub-county 4. Naomba kwa kila mmoja wetu, tuko maseneta 67, na muomba nyote mtembelee Embu County siku ya Madaraka, na muomba kwa sababu mnajua masenators hawana nguvu yote siko kwa county na national government, mweze kwenda huko leo, mlale huko na kesho asubuhi muwe pale ndio mweze kupata fiti, kwa sababu tumeona mara mingi maseneta ni kama wanasukuliwa kama si watu, na ninataka kuambia watu wa Kenya senator ndio hapa house. Ya pili, Embu County pale mtaona nataka nimwambie upande wa Embu tuko na miraa, tuko na manjani, tuko na makandamia na pia na maembe. Huko ni kilimo, ingawa mambo ya kilimo iko na shinde kwa sababu mkulima anashukua kama si mtu. Kwa hiyo naomba afuta hiyo maneno, serikali ama Senate ikikuja hapa iangalie vile kilimo itaangaliwa na macho ya ile ya kweli kabisa. Ndio kila
Mr. Speaker, I'm on my feet.
Senator Mudigi. Kuna hoja ya nidhamu.
Mr. Speaker, I'm on my feet. On a point of order. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to standing order on responsibility for statements, I don't think it is correct for the Senator of Embu County to say that senators have no power in his own language. Mr. Speaker, perhaps. Mr. Speaker, I'm still on my feet.
He is on a point of order. Wait until he finishes.
Mr. Speaker, at the risk of violating our own standing orders, perhaps you allow me to say it in the language that he said it, so that he maybe understands what the problem was. Amesema anajua maseneta hawana nguvu, nguvu iko katika serikali za county na serikali kuu. So, Mr. Speaker, that is a very dangerous statement coming from a Senate, because we have constitutional powers in this House. If we had no such powers, we would not be here. I would wish that Senator Mundigi withdraw that statement, because it goes to reinforce the characterization and perception out there amongst the public that we indeed a House with no power. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Labda kuna nguvu ingine anasema sio hiyo ya uongozi. Labda kuna nguvu ingine, labda iko na itirafu hapa. What
Bwana Speaker,
you know, I gave you a privilege just to welcome senators, not to dramatize your issues here.
Bwana Speaker, nafikiria Senator mwenzangu na viki wangu wa Azimio akuelewa vile nimesema. Watu wengi wanaona kama Senator ana power, lakini tunajua Senator ni hapa House. Senator wa Nairobi na viki wangu wa Azimio. Na kwa sababu sio siku ya kurusha mawe, unavaa uelewe. Mimi nimesema watu wanaona kama Senator ana nguvu, lakini katika Kenya Senator ni hapa House. Kwa hiyo naukaribisha pale Kenya, ukuje uangalie watu wa Embu, tuko na watu wote wa Kenya kwanza. Kwa hivyo Azimio nyote karibuni Embu County.
Next statement by Senator for Taita Taveta County, Jones Mwaruma.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to request for these two statements. Allow me to go through both of them. Mr. Speaker, on the first statement, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources on the status of mineral royalty accounts in light of the court ruling that struck down part of the mining royalties distribution law. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state the number of companies undertaking mining activities in Taita Taveta County and the actual location of the mining activities. 2, list the mining companies that have community development agreements with the host communities in the county and the amount of each has spent on corporate social responsibility. And lastly, 3, indicate the actions the government intends to take following the court ruling that struck down part of the mining royalties distribution law, including how already collected royalties will be dealt with. On the second statement, Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget regarding the utilization of the Equalization Fund in the County Government of Taita Taveta. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state the criteria employed in the formulation of the second equalization fund formula. 2, state reasons why a significant number of words in Taita Taveta County were omitted, despite their apparent developmental lag in areas such as road network infrastructure, health facilities, electricity connectivity, and adequate water supply. 2, furnish a list of projects undertaken under the first formula, indicating the nature and specific physical locations of these projects in Taita Taveta County. 4, disclose the budget allocation for projects and the amount utilized during the first formula period, specifying the nature of projects in water, roads, electricity connectivity, and health sectors across all the 47 counties. And 5, table a report on the status of projects under the Equalization Fund in all 47 counties, specifying the actual project, its location, and the status of completion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next statement by Senator Mwenda Gataya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have 3 statements that I want to make, and I will start with this is a statement on the compensation of a family struck by lightning in Tharaka-Nithi County. Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations regarding the compensation of a family struck by lightning in Ibote sub-location, Karocho location in Tharaka-Nithi County on 24th of April, 2023. In the statement, Honorable Speaker, the committee should appraise the Senate on the state of investigations into the death of 2 sisters, Ms. Jacqueline Kanywa and Ms. Florida Kendi, after lightning struck their house in Ibote sub-location. State if there are plans by the county government to compensate the affected and the family in compliance with Section 6 of the Tharaka-Nithi County Emergency Fund Act number 4 of 2016, considering that the mother of the 2 deceased girls also sustained burn injuries on her hands caused by the lightning. And number 3, Honorable Speaker, the same committee should state the measures in place to deal with the lightning menace, such as installation of lightning arresters in the Tharaka-Nithi County, which is prone to such instances, particularly during the rainy season. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. This is Senator Mwenda Gataya, More Fire, Tharaka-Nithi County. In the second statement, Honorable Speaker, I am seeking answers on the declassification of Igambangombe sub-county in the Tharaka-Nithi County as an arid and semi-arid area also. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Cohesion, Equal Opportunities and Regional Integration regarding the declassification of Igambangombe sub-county in the Tharaka-Nithi County as an arid and semi-arid hassle. In the statement, Honorable Speaker, the committee should state measures, if any, to revoke the classification of Igambangombe sub-county as an hassle area, noting that such classification has an effect on allocation of funds by government for development, provision of government services, as well as retention of public servants in the area. 2, and advise on measures in place to mitigate against further marginalization of the region following its declassification as an area. Number 3, Honorable Speaker, the committee should explain targeted interventions by the national government to initiate development projects in the region, including improvement of infrastructure and government facilities such as health facilities and schools. Number 4, Honorable Speaker, the committee should report on whether the National Treasury intends to allocate funds to Igambangombe sub-county to help mitigate the effects of harsh climatic conditions, including recurrent spells of drought that have further caused further marginalization of the area. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. This is Senator Mwenda Gataya. More further, the third statement, Honorable Speaker, is on the erection of speed bumps on Parliament Road. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise, pursuant to Standing Order 53.1, to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing on the erection of speed bumps on Parliament Road. In the statement, the committee should state the plans, if any, by the government to erect speed bumps along Parliament Road, noting that pedestrians are at risk being hit by motorists who overspeed at the zebra crossing, and indicate the timelines for the erection of the speed bumps. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Senator Mwenda Gataya. Senator Tharaka Nithi.
Next, Senator Jackson Mandago.
Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Cohesion, Equality, Equal Opportunity and Regional Integration regarding the reservation of 5% of employment positions for persons with disabilities in the public sector. In the statement, the committee should, 1, clarify whether the provisions of the Persons with Disability Act 2003 on the reservation of employment positions for PWDs have been complied with in the ongoing recruitment by state corporations, including Kenya Revenue Authority, Kenya Water Institute, and the Communication Authority of Kenya. And 2, state the measures the Office of the Inspector General of State Corporation has put in place to ensure compliance with the Persons with Disabilities Act 2003 by state corporation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Statement number 7 by the Meru Senator is deferred to the next sitting. Senator Reverend Julius Mulgo, West Pokot County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to request for a statement on the registration of persons in West Pokot County. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the statement, the committee should indicate plans, if any, by the government to establish national registration bureau offices in all sub-counties of West Pokot County, and secondly, state measures in place to enhance access to the service, such as national identification cards, among other services offered by the National Registration Bureau by residents of the county. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Joseph Giduku.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53, subsection 1, to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transport and Housing on the construction status of the road connecting Lake Kenyatta Primary School to Ziwa Junction in Lamu County. In the statement, the committee should provide details of the tender. The committee should provide the details of the tender of the upgrade of the road from earthen to concrete paving blocks, including the date, identity of the contractor who won the award, the amount of funds allocated for the project, and the scope of works to be undertaken. Clarify whether the Ministry of Roads and Transport is aware that the work was done but the concrete paving blocks were subsequently removed by the contractor, and if so, state the reason of the same. And number 3, state the measures in place, if any, by the government to have the road reconstructed to the specification provided in the tender award, providing the timeline for the completion of the project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next is a statement by Senator Raphael Shimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing on the construction of the Kwale Kinango Road. In the statement, the committee should, number one, provide a comprehensive report on the current status of construction and maintenance of the Kwale Kinango Road, indicating the timeline for completion of the project. Number two, explain the challenges faced during the construction and maintenance process, detailing the measures being taken to address the challenges to ensure timely completion of the project. Number three, outline plans in place, if any, to engage the local communities along the road to address their concerns as they arise throughout the construction phase. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, appraise the Senate on the steps being taken to ensure the road is built to specifications provided in the tender award, further stating measures in place to ensure regular maintenance of the road. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The statement, thank you. The statement by Senator Murang'a County and Nandi Senator. Those two statements and deferred. Is there a majority leader? Under 57-1? Oh, sorry, the last one by Senator Mohamed Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. Nimesimama Mheshimiwa Spika kuambatana na kanuni ya 53(1) ya kanuni za kudumu za bunge hili kuomba kauli kutoka kwa kamati ya kudumu ya usalama wa kitaifa, ulinzi na uhusiano wa kimataifa kuhusu kuchapishwa kwa pasipoti nchini ambako kunaathiri mipango ya safari ya mahujaji wanaokwenda Maka, mji wa Maka nchini Saudi Arabia kwa ibada yao ya hija mwaka huu. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika taarifa hiyo kamati iangazia yafuatayo: iarifu Seneti chanzo cha ucheleweshaji wa usindikishaji wa pasipoti katika idara ya uhamiaji, ikizingatia madhara na usumbufu unaoletwa na ucheleweshaji huo kwa mahujaji wanaokwenda Maka, Saudi Arabia kutekeleza ibada ya haji katika mwezi huu wa Juni mwaka 2023. Mheshimiwa Spika, ibada ya haji inatarajiwa baadaye mwezi ujao kuanzia tarehe 20 mwezi wa 6 mwaka huu. Mheshimiwa Spika. Pili, Mheshimiwa Spika, ieleze ni hatua gani serikali inachukua kuharakisha usindikaji na uchapishaji wa pasipoti hizo, ikizingatiwa kwamba mahujaji watalazimika kuvunja na kughairi safari zao iwapo jambo hilo halitatatuliwa kwa haraka. Mheshimiwa Spika, tatu, ibaini ni mipango gani inafanywa na taasisi ya Kenya Hajj Mission iliyoko chini ya uongozi wa Supreme Council of Kenya Muslim SUPKEM kuhakikisha kwamba mahujaji katika msimu huu wa haji wanapata usaidizi mwafaka, ikiwepo kufuatilia na idara ya uhamiaji pamoja na Wizara ya Mambo ya Ndani na Utawala wa Kitaifa kuharakisha uchapishaji wa pasipoti hizo. Mheshimiwa Spika, asante kwa kunipa fursa hii.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order. I hereby present Standing Order number 57-1, sorry. Mr. Speaker, sir, I hereby present to the Senate the business of the House for the week commencing Tuesday, the 6th of June, 2023, pursuant to Standing Order number 57-1. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I highlighted in my statement on Thursday, the 25th of May, 2023, there are important financial instruments which are pending consideration in the Senate. These are the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bill number 16 of 2023, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bill number 3 of 2023, and the Equalization Fund Administration Bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2023. These financial instruments are critical for the operations of the county government, and their expeditious consideration, passage, and assent will facilitate county governments to finalize their budgets ahead of the commencement of the financial next financial in July 2023. Mr. Speaker, that's a very important point, and it's good that while I say this, stickler for the rule of law, Senator Mtata is here. You understand how counties are supposed to do budgets. Yet, unfortunately, as a House, we cannot raise the requisite 24 delegations to pass these particular bills so that counties can then book them onto their books and do them as a singular budget for the counties that qualify under equalization fund. Therefore, I want to request, Mr. Speaker, that the whips, I don't see the whip of the minority side. I know Senator Boni is here, that we please do whatever we can to make sure that on Tuesday next week, we take a vote on these very important financial instruments, Mr. Speaker. I also urge colleague senators to be present in the House, Mr. Speaker, on that particular day, on many other days. Mr. Speaker, you know, it's the irony of life. During campaign periods, thousands of people fight to get a chance to represent others in Parliament and come to this House. Unfortunately, after people have granted you the opportunity to sit there and represent them on their behalf and be there on their behalf, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, you find empty benches in the, and seats in both houses of Parliament. It's something I have never understood, Mr. Speaker. I therefore urge, Mr. Speaker, that we be present on Tuesday so that we conclude on that very important business. Mr. Speaker, sir, in summary, out of the 33 bills published in the Senate, the following are pending consideration. 19 are at second reading stage. 5 are at the committee of the whole, 2 of which are listed in today's order paper at order number 10 and 11 for division. It's rather obvious to everyone whether we'll have division or not, Mr. Speaker. And while a further 6 are undergoing concurrence pursuant to to Article 110(3) of the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Senators, from the foregoing, it is evident that the processing of bills is slow-paced. Contributing factors to this state of affairs include unavailability of movers to prosecute their business, lack of quorum, which I have addressed myself to, lack of sufficient county delegations. I have mentioned and said as much this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I therefore cannot overemphasize the need for senators to prioritize House business in the plenary, for movers of bills to be available in the chamber, and for senators to remain in the House until conclusion of business. It is also imperative for the majority and minority party whips to mobilize the requisite number of senators for divisions on bills to be undertaken in a timely manner. Mr. Speaker, I'll point out that while this hasn't been done, I believe it will be done in the course of the day. Yesterday at the Senate Business Committee, we received a report, Mr. Speaker, point-for-point comparison of how much business the previous Senate had transacted by this point of their term, Mr. Speaker. It mirrors almost word for word, Mr. Speaker, that we have done equal work in the last, is it about 9 months now, Mr. Speaker, of our existence, as compared to the previous Senate. Yet, Mr. Speaker, you know that the previous Senate, because of the disputed presidential election, did not actually properly sit until December of 2017, Mr. Speaker. We have been in this House since September 2017, yet, because of what I have just described, Mr. Speaker, we continue to face these challenges. I appeal to colleagues, senators, that please let us take the business of this House with the seriousness that it deserves. The petitions process is gaining prominence, Mr. Speaker, whereupon members of the public are exercising their right under Article 37 and 119 of the Constitution to submit prayers for the Senate to consider any matter within its authority. There are presently 19 petitions which have been referred to the various committees. This is aside from the 2 that are listed in today's order paper. I urge respective standing committees to which these petitions have been referred to expedite consideration of the petitions and to table reports pursuant to standing order number 238-2. Mr. Speaker, I did mention earlier while commenting about petitions that this is a continuous stamp of approval that members of the public give us as a House. The fact that they keep on sending petitions before this House, sometimes even like today, Mr. Speaker, was quite significant. A matter that had been taken to the National Assembly wasn't properly resolved, found its way by way of petition by students of Kenyatta University, Mr. Speaker, to this House. That's a stamp of approval. That's people saying that they believe in the Senate that we can dispense of this business. It's my hope, Mr. Speaker, sincere most of it, that our colleagues who serve in the various committees will expeditiously consider those petitions and report the relevant business, Mr. Speaker. Not to mention the fact, Mr. Speaker, that Senator Sige, on behalf of a citizen of this country, presented what I will consider a class action petition, Mr. Speaker, where an ordinary citizen is inviting this House to look into the operations of corporations that are huge enough, perhaps, even to look the other way in terms of their obligations and not have any of our state agencies nab them on their bad practices. But the citizen believes that this Senate has men and women of integrity, that this Senate has the power, Mr. Speaker, and the wherewithal that is needed to take on this institution and give justice to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, there are 22 motions on diverse topics which are also pending for consideration. I urge the respective movers, Mr. Speaker, of these motions to be in the chamber whenever they are scheduled in the order paper. It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker. I know that the substantive speaker gave communication a few weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, on what happens to motions that are called upon and their movers are not present in the House. We thought that that will at least encourage people who bring motions to this House to be seated. But I know that many of them continue to be dropped. Perhaps even many others will be dropped just a few minutes after I'm done with this statement, Mr. Speaker, for the simple reason that somebody has proposed a motion, but they don't have the time to either be present or at least write to the Speaker and inform them of the reason for their absence and why they prefer that that matter be deferred, Mr. Speaker. I cannot even address myself more than that on that particular. On matters of questions, at its meeting held on Tuesday, 30th May 2023, the SPC approved the 5th set of questions to be scheduled in the order paper for Wednesday, 14th June 2023 morning sittings. The questions, which include a question by Senator for Laikipia to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior on security situations in both Laikipia and the North Rift region. Mr. Speaker, a further one by the same Senator to the same Minister on the administration, on the Minister for Interior concerning the rampant abuse of ketamine, Mr. Speaker. There's also a question by Senator Said Chute of Marsabit to the Minister for ASAL and Regional Development concerning state of tendering for relief food in the country. A very important statement, Mr. Speaker. There's a further question by the same Senator to CS for Trade and Investment concerning pre-qualification of companies to import commodities by KNTC, Kenya National Trading Company. Of course, Mr. Speaker, I know when we began this business of question time to Cabinet Secretaries, our colleagues from the minorities side had their misgivings about the process, but I'm glad to note that increasingly as this process has gone on, I see many of them show up on Wednesday morning, including none other than the leader of minority and a few other senators that I saw this morning actually, and they participated in asking questions to ministers directly here on the floor on issues touching on their specific counties, Mr. Speaker. I believe, as is the course of politics, Mr. Speaker, somehow some things always resolve themselves. I hope that that matter will stand resolved, and we shall carry on together as a Senate and have an opportunity to ask ministers. I have seen also, Mr. Speaker, something which I do not complain about because it's not in my business to complain. And when the ministers eventually complain to me, I'll pass blame back to you on the expanded interpretation of what supplementary questions are. If you're in the session today, Mr. Speaker, you know that both cabinet ministers that appeared here answered a completely new set of questions separate from what had been asked, but I'm glad that they handled it well. Mr. Speaker, of course, you know, they say the famous or the infamous story about the camel and the tent, Mr. Speaker, where it asked for just an opportunity to put in the head alone, Mr. Speaker. And you know subsequently what eventually happened. I guess that's what this parliament can do with this question time to our ministers, Mr. Speaker. Of course, the minute, once they are here, if there is a matter of great national importance, Mr. Speaker, we cannot sweep it under the carpet and just say, because it was not a previously asked question, it's not something worth considering, Mr. Speaker. I believe as a House, we have the power to ask that particular cabinet minister, what exactly are they doing about that particular matter? So we celebrate you as senators, Mr. Speaker, for allowing that latitude for colleagues to raise issues with ministers, issues that touch on the people that they represent in this House, Mr. Speaker. As indicated in the order paper number 12, I will shortly move a motion for the suspension of the morning sitting on Wednesday, the 7th of June, Mr. Speaker, so as to avail the opportunity for members of parliament, including senators included, Mr. Speaker, to participate in the national prayer breakfast. This is an annual event convened by parliament, just for the sake of it, because maybe there are people who may hold different views. You will have to know, Senator Catherine Muma, that because bipartisan is a vogue word, this is a bipartisan event, just for your comfort. Otherwise, there are people who maybe think they may not want to show about it. This is one occasion that as members of parliament, together with the executive, we tolerate each other and pray. Hope that the prayers can intervene and solve some of the problems that we continue to face. Of course, there is an all-important ritual that on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, we are allowed to sing and present a hymn. Because of the very blessed Senator Crystal Asige, Mr. Speaker, I suggest that on Tuesday, maybe at 4 o'clock, she can organize so that we practice the hymn that we are going to sing on that particular day. It is embarrassing to sing with our colleagues from the National Assembly. Senate can do a better job on its own. So, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I hope Senator Crystal Asige is properly briefed on that particular matter, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, the 6th of June, 2023, SBC will consider and approve business of the day. This will contain business that will not have been concluded from the order paper today, Mr. Speaker, and we will guide the same. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I wish all honorable senators a happy Madaraka Day tomorrow, being 1st June 2023. I thank you, colleague senators, and hereby lay the statement on the table of the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. As you have already indicated, you see now we cannot transact several businesses here because we have no numbers to go to division. Therefore, business appearing as order number 8, 9, 10, and 11 are defined. We go to order number 12.
Order number 12, motion, suspension of the morning sitting of the Senate on Wednesday, 7th June, 2023.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move this motion in an amended form that, notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate made on the 16th of February 2023 and 29th March 2023, pursuant to the standing order number 32 on approval of the Senate calendar regular sessions for the second session 2023, and further notwithstanding the provision of standing order number 34-1, the Senate resolves to suspend its morning sittings on Wednesday, the 7th of June, 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reason I moved the motion in an amended format is because previously when I gave the notice of motion, it was assumed that that prayer session actually was to happen today actually, Mr. Speaker, but because of many other reasons, it couldn't be undertaken. It has been moved to next week, Mr. Speaker. Like I have mentioned, I served in PSC, Mr. Speaker, and I know that Parliament is a significant contributor, actually. From our own accounts as Parliament, we fund this particular event, and therefore, and we sit together. Of course, there is chairmanship. I think Senator Dan Manzo is one of the co-chairs, alongside, I'm not sure who serves as a co-chair from the National Assembly in the planning and putting together this event. Therefore, it is important, Mr. Speaker, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, for members to find time and attend to this function. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to request the House to agree with me in this procedural motion that we suspend our sittings on that Wednesday morning, and then we shall resume later on in the afternoon, Mr. Speaker, after the prayers. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request Senator Raphael Chimera to second.
Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion by the Majority Leader. This is a very, very important function nationally. As you all might be aware, as a nation, we are a very prayerful nation, and I think this is a proper motion, and it's actually okay if, as a Senate, we suspend our sitting on that day so that we can have an opportunity as senators, as Kenyans, through our leadership, to actually converge together and gather together and pray for the nation. And I also want to take this opportunity to also thank my colleagues and senators for actually taking the morning session to basically relay their questions to the CSS. But I believe next Wednesday, we have a chance to congregate together, speak to our Lord, air our issues, and pray for this nation. We know we've come from a very tumultuous political period, and it is only prayer and prayer that can actually lead this nation in the right direction. For those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support that motion. To second, sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that notwithstanding the regulations of the resolutions of the Senate made on 16 February 2023 and 19 March 2023, pursuant to Standing Order 32 on approval of the Senate calendar, regular sessions for the second session 2023, and further notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 41, the Senate resolves to suspend its morning sitting on Wednesday, 7th June 2023. Asige Kage Christo, you want to make a contribution?
Thank you, Speaker. I had pressed the microphone actually to make contributions to the statements. I didn't know that we were not going to be contributing to the statements that were laid under 53.1.
We were time bound. Time was not with us. So today I used the word may. Then Senator Koiti. Omtata.
Yes. I think I had wanted to contribute to the motion, and I would like to contribute by saying that having adjourning for the prayer day is apt. Even though we are not a theocracy and we masquerade as one, it's important that those who want to pray are given an opportunity to pray, and we see to it that the opportunity is granted. Since it will be interdenominational, only that prayers are a private function, and a taxpayer should not pick up the bill. So my majority leader told us that Parliament contributes. I've not been asked for my contribution, so I don't know how Parliament contributes. Is it from the taxpayers' funds or from our funds? But it's a good thing to pray, as long as the taxpayer does not pay for the prayers. The others shall be violating the Constitution on the establishment of religion. There should be no state religion, either in terms of all religions being state religions or one religion being a state religion. There will be no state religion. So we should avoid trying to portray this country as a theocracy, but we should give room to God in the public spaces, but as a private endeavor, not to be paid for by the taxpayer. And I will not attend the prayer meeting unless I get an invoice saying you have to pay so much, because I know there's a lot of food being eaten there. So I've not been invoiced for that. So I will not participate in the stealing of public funds by MPs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Moses Kajwan.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion. Mr. Speaker,
when I look at the Constitution of Kenya, the preamble says, "We, the people of Kenya, acknowledging the supremacy of the Almighty God of all creation." And Mr. Speaker, that preamble does not talk about the Jewish God, the Islamic God, the African God, the Caucasian God. It talks about God of all creation. And so we must acknowledge the supremacy of God, whoever you perceive him to be. I think there's a phrase in Desiderata by Mark Reman that talks about believing in God, whoever you perceive him to be. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, what we must be careful about in this country is to elevate one God above others, is to elevate the Christian God above the African gods, or to elevate the African gods above the Christian gods. In this country, and even in the county that I represent, many people are practicing Christians. But there are still people who believe in African gods and African spirits, who believe in a connection between those present and those who have gone before us. And that is why, even when we go to funerals, after praying, after invoking all the Latin liturgies that accompany our burial ceremonies, you will find us saying to the person, the dead, telling the dead to go to pass our greetings and pass messages to those who died before them. That tells you, Mr. Speaker, that we are like the Oreo biscuit. We are Christian on the outside and African on the inside. Mr. Speaker, it's important for a country to pray. It is important for the country to recognize God. But our Constitution also requires us to recognize other people. Mr. Speaker, if you look at that preamble, our first acknowledgement is the supremacy of the Almighty God. The next line is that we need to honor those who struggle to bring freedom and justice to our land. When will Parliament ever adjourn to honor those heroes who struggle to bring freedom and justice to our land? Yes, we've got Madaraka Day and Jamhuri Day. Those are national and public holidays. But when will Parliament deliberately take time to honor those who heroically struggled to bring freedom and justice to our land? Mr. Speaker, that preamble is the basis upon which the state of Kenya is established. And so let us not only think about God when things are going bad. Let us think about the heroes who established this state called Kenya. Let us look at the other commitments that we have made in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, God helps those who help themselves. And I do believe in that. And there are some people who think that that is a saying by dynasties and not a saying that favors hustlers. Because even the hustlers, if you are not going to go out to push that wheelbarrow to the market, you are not going to get money for the day. This country cannot mismanage its finances. This country cannot mismanage policy and then turn to prayer. We must do the things that God has endowed us with knowledge and wisdom and capacity to do. And only then, after we have applied ourselves fully, and we see that results are not forthcoming, that is when we go for that national prayer, national fasting, and all those activities that we are being encouraged to do. Mr. Speaker, I have no problem with religion. I have no problem with us setting aside a day for prayer. I only have a problem with anything that will breach Article 8 of the Constitution that says that there shall be no state religion. I want to encourage those who are organizing the prayer day that let us ensure that all the gods that we believe in are worshipped and are upheld and are put at the same level on the day we are having the national prayers. Mr. Speaker, finally, if you look at the second schedule of our Constitution, our national anthem is there. And the first word, the opening comments in our national anthem is, "O God of all creation, bless this our land and nation." But then the next one says, "Justice be our shield and defender." Mr. Speaker, I hope we can be true to the words of the national anthem, not just be true to the first stanza, but be true to the entire national anthem, so that we have justice in our country, we have liberty, and plenty can be found within our borders. And when there's plenty within our borders, the state shall not steal it back from us in the form of draconian taxes. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Honorable Senators, having no other senator interested to contribute, I call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the colleagues who've contributed to this fairly straightforward motion. You know, Mr. Speaker, in the 19th century, there was a German philosopher called Friedrich Nietzsche, and he advanced the theory then that became to be known as God is dead. Therefore, a few of his adherents, Mr. Speaker, at the university where he taught, wrote a huge mural on the wall that God is dead, Friedrich Nietzsche. Then as fate will have it, Mr. Speaker, in the year 1900, he passed on. Then one cheeky student came and wrote underneath the mural that they had made celebrating Friedrich Nietzsche and signed on to it with a spray paint that Nietzsche is dead, signed God. Mr. Speaker, that lesson is to maybe those who may want to believe or imagine that for one reason or the other, there is no place for God in society. I don't get that sense from many of the contributions that have been made today. But, Mr. Speaker, you know, it's important that as a House we take time. And I appreciate what Senator Kajwang has read for us on the sanctity of our thoughts and the place of God in our affairs as a state, Mr. Speaker. I do not think, Mr. Speaker, that in any way getting us to pray suggests that there is a dereliction of duty on our part as leaders, especially those that serve in this present administration. But rather, it's an admission, Mr. Speaker, that despite all the knowledge that we may have, sometimes there are challenges that are beyond the will and the power of man that only the supernatural can solve for us, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, to take time for 2, 3, or 4 hours at most, because I've attended many of these breakfasts, to, as a national leaders, reflect on where our country is and where we need to go, I do not think that it suggests in any way, Mr. Speaker, that we have surrendered and are saying that only prayers can solve us, Mr. Speaker, much as we know that actually in most of these things, Mr. Speaker, especially the challenges that we face today as a country, Mr. Speaker, that it will take beyond the actions of man to rescue where we are, Mr. Speaker, because the challenges that Kenya faces today, Mr. Speaker, are quite unique and interesting. Because on one side, you have people trying to resolve them, and on the other, you have people who are part and parcel of creation of the mess, who are now shouting loudest, Mr. Speaker, about how not to resolve that particular mess, Mr. Speaker. It's a unique situation that we find ourselves in as a country. But we hope, Mr. Speaker, that in times of prayer, we can take time to reflect and think even about the less fortunate, Mr. Speaker, because of just a mere proposal, Mr. Speaker, of something called a housing levy. Now the conversation has been alive for the first time. In fact, yesterday, Mr. Speaker, a constituent of mine asked me, what is this law that you people have brought? Little did they know that finance bill has always been part and parcel of parliamentary practice, that it's a yearly ritual in Parliament, that it's done, its consideration. And when I reminded them, Mr. Speaker, that if you recall 3 or 4 years ago, there was a similar fight when VAT was being introduced on petrol and fuel, Mr. Speaker, and that there was a big divide in the National Assembly at that particular time, is when they recalled that indeed there have been such conversations before. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we find ourselves in a unique place that unfortunately cheap and retrogressive politics, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately cannot solve this particular problem, Mr. Speaker. I hope that when we take time to pray that particular time, as leaders will come to the realization that we have a country to mind after we are done with our politics, depending on whichever side of the divide we belong to, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't wish to say, I'm sure there are other opportunities to say a lot on that particular topic. Let me not flood on this very important motion, Mr. Speaker, that allows us as a House to take a break and go and pray, Mr. Speaker. So I welcome everybody, including Senator Mtata, who has said he wants to see an invoice. I will gladly tell him that I have paid for you, so you are more than welcome, Mr. Speaker, on that day. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I want to determine that this matter does not involve counties, and therefore I put the question that, notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate made on 16th February 2023 and 29th March 2023, pursuant to Standing Order 32, on approve the Senate calendar regular sessions for the second session 2023, and further notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 41, the Senate resolves to suspend its morning sitting on Wednesday, 7th June 2023. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 13, the Employment Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 11 of 2022, second reading, resumption of debate interrupted on Tuesday, 30th May 2023.
Senator Chelege, you have a balance of 55 minutes. I assume you were moving this motion yesterday. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I continue in moving the bill on the Employment Amendment Bill number 2022 on the right to disconnect, Mr. Speaker. As you are aware, I said yesterday in the opening remarks, this bill on the right to disconnect generated a lot of issues across the country, where people are saying that this bill will promote kupiga sherehe because your employer will not call you, will not call the employee, Mr. Speaker, sir. And Mr. Speaker, sir, in the onset of, Mr. Speaker, in the onset of COVID and lockdown, we started working remotely from home. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of challenges, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to how do you regulate. There is change in the traditional environment, Mr. Speaker, when you look under Section 27 on hours of work. Mr. Speaker, as per the standard practice, hours of work in Kenya is between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. in the evening, Mr. Speaker. So the right to disconnect bill is in recognition of the ever-changing work environment where many people, Mr. Speaker, are working from home. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of misinformation about this bill, that the employer cannot call an employee after work, working remotely from. How will you regulate, Mr. Speaker? How will you regulate, Mr. Speaker, on the hours? How do you ensure that somebody who is in the office, Mr. Speaker? So this bill of right to disconnect, there is a standard of engagement. Mr. Speaker, naturally, you would be paid overtime. You would be paid for extra working hours. Mr. Speaker, this bill of right to disconnect, Mr. Speaker, is to protect Mr. Speaker, the workers from burnout, Mr. Speaker, from fatigue. The employers who are notorious, Mr. Speaker, when at around 4:45, they give you an assignment and say by tomorrow 8 a.m. in the morning, in the first briefing meeting, the report should be ready. Mr. Speaker, we are threatening the right to privacy. We are threatening, Mr. Speaker, the right to family, Mr. Speaker, which is very important because family time, right to privacy, Mr. Speaker, is important. Mr. Speaker, this right to disconnect, for example, is many people have been given opportunity, Mr. Speaker, and the right to disconnect. Developed countries like France in 2016, Mr. Speaker, passed the law. Belgium has done, and where we have 65,000 on the public sector, Mr. Speaker, France passed in January, Belgium, Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, Portugal passed the right to disconnect. US is in the consideration. In 2012, Volkswagen Company Limited gave powers where it was being blocked from getting emails beyond 5 p.m., Madam Speaker. And because this was to protect from burnout and overwork, Madam Speaker, sorry, I've noted the change on the seat. Therefore, even, Madam Speaker, in January 2021, the European Union, came up with the right to disconnect as a worker's right to be able, Mr. Speaker, and this is the definition that right to disconnect has been given, Madam Speaker. The EU have defined right to disconnect to mean right to disconnect a worker's right to be able to disengage. Right, Madam Speaker, to disconnect a worker's right to be able to disengage from work and refrain from engaging in work-related electronic. That's a mouthful of definition, Madam Speaker, and therefore, to refrain from engaging in work-related electronic communications, e.g. emails, other SMSs during non-working hours. So that is how right to disconnect has been defined. And I want Kenyans to understand there must be a proper way of doing these things. And therefore, in my opening remarks, Madam Speaker, it is important. I wanted to open the remarks of this, the right of employees to have their personal time and privacy respected and for connected purposes. So that when you go after 5, Madam Speaker, there is an argument in the country, Madam Speaker, where people are asking, for example, how can we implement this law? I've seen even Federation of Kenya Employers raising questions on how you can comply with it. I've seen, what I'm just doing, Madam Speaker, is just migrating the workspace to in line with the remote working from home. Madam Speaker, when you look at Article 41 on labor relations, it talks about every person has the right to fair labor practices. Every worker has the right to reasonable working conditions, Madam Speaker. Therefore, it's a labor right. Even under the Employment Act, we must provide a reasonable working environment, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, even if you look at the Section 31, Employment Act, it's about housing, Madam Speaker. And in that housing, you have seen a situation where the issue of a housing levy ban is becoming a serious issue. In fact, Kenyans did not know the provision of Section 31, where, Madam Speaker, I can just read for the benefit of colleagues, is Section 31. An employer shall at all times, at his own expense, provide reasonable housing accommodation for each of his employees, either at or near to the place of employment. This is the finance bill on talking about housing levy fund, Madam Speaker. Now Kenyans are realizing that that you must provide for your employees a housing. You know, people used to imagine that the obligation, and the Employment Act is very, so what I'm just increasing is enriching reasonable working conditions. So that one, to protect employees. Madam Speaker, you are the floor of the House, and I heard your serious contribution on mental health of police officers. Most of our employees in Kenya and workers are suffering from mental burnout, mental illness, because of the pressure from work. People are suffering from diabetes, pressure, heart-related diseases because of the pressure of targets. Madam Speaker, in fact, private like banks, you must target. People are given, you must target. I'm not saying, sorry, Madam Speaker, I'm not saying that people should not sign performance contract. They should. Because there are targets. They are being told, if you don't achieve this, you are fired. Madam Speaker, it destabilizes even the mind of that employee. And you find employees feel now disengaged from their family. And you know the basic unit of any society is having a strong family. That is the strength of a nation. If you don't have a strong family, you must be there for your children, you must be there for your spouses, Madam Speaker, so that they also grow, so that we don't raise a generation where they don't respect authority or accountability or transparency, Madam Speaker. And therefore, this right to disconnect, and it is good, the People's Watchman, is on the floor, and I'm giving him an addition to now to properly litigate, because if we pass this law, you shall not have an employer calling you beyond your leave days, your off days, your beyond working hours. Because, Madam Speaker, we will be abusing that right that has been provided for. And therefore, Senator Okiya Omtata, as the People's Watchman and one of the serious litigators on the human rights that we have in the Republic, Madam Speaker, will have opportunity to also look at the law and be able to write. Madam Speaker, many people would argue this is the first law in Africa. Many people would say, why would we need to disengage? I've given enough reasons as to why. Right to privacy, avoid burnout, protect mental wellness of the employees, ensure fair work, fair remuneration, equal work, equal to equal pay. And therefore, Madam Speaker, it is very important. Where, I'm told in some organizations that some of the managers give work to their employees immediately before 5. Which is unfortunate and which is unfair, Madam Speaker. I know there could be office wars and office. I know some managers are malicious. Maybe they want to hold down, especially the interns, and of course with their other intentions that are not known. But the point is that so that it is a warning. I'm not saying, because I've seen Federation of Kenya Employers, Central Trade Union, we are saying if you have to call me as your worker, there must be some sort of arrangement. There must be sort of engagement so that you pay overtime. If I leave office at 5 and you give me a work that I should complete by tomorrow morning, then I should be paid for that period. So we pay for overtime, we pay for the beyond the normal salary, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I'm looking at amending Employment Act, that is introducing Section 27A or Clause 27A. An employee has a right to disconnect from the employer. An employer, for the purposes of this section, put in place policy regarding the circumstances under which an employer may contact an employee during out-of-work hours. So it is not a blanket statement. Circumstances under which an employer may contact an employee during out-of-work hours. So it is there, Roman 2, use of electronic devices to send or receive information, messages, or any digital work-related communication during out-of-work hours. Number 3, circumstances under which the right to disconnect may be waived. So it is very important. For example, somebody can ask, what about security agencies? What about essential services? This has been provided for. There is an engagement, like on-call doctors and many others. Madam Speaker, Part B, specify the nature of compensation for employees who work during out of work hours. Just that overtime, payment of overtime, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, where an employer has employed more than 10 employees, such employer shall, in formulating a policy under subsection 2, consult the respective employees or, where applicable, trade union. So I don't know why COTU, Central Organization of Trade Union, was worried. I don't know why people were worried, Madam Speaker. Yet this is a very straightforward matter that talks about anything with the union will look at it. The right to disconnect shall be subject to the terms and conditions specified under Section 10. The right to disconnect shall be limited only to the extent necessary to address the emergency arising out of work falling within the responsibility of the employee. Madam Speaker, if you are a doctor or a nurse working, for example, at KU, not KU KNH here, and you are needed as on emergency, if you are a police officer, if you are anybody working under emergency, Madam Speaker, it is important that the right to disconnect shall be to the extent necessary to address the emergency. Outside the emergency, you must be paid overtime. You must be paid for working extra hours. Because, Madam Speaker, and I was asking Federation of Kenya Employers that, Madam Speaker, you must also have a serious, what do we call, also productive workforce. And I don't think having workers beyond 5 in the evening, concentration is there, sugar levels are there, they are tired. Madam Speaker, I don't think it would be fair at that point, Madam Speaker. And therefore, when you look at this, is that I'm telling the Federation of Kenya Employers and COTU and other trade unions, the reason the law was given 8 to 5 p.m., 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. as working time, and I think 56 hours or 52 hours within a week that every should work, is to also, that employee of yours to rest. Madam Speaker, you have seen even UHC, they were disengaged the other day on 19 May, Madam Speaker, on 19 May. The contract of UHC, who have been contracted under COVID program, came to an end, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we are talking about the work, improving working environment. And I think that is what is important, Madam Speaker. And therefore, there is a lot of victimization. So when the question that Kenyans ask, Madam Speaker, if your boss calls you and you don't reply, so what happens? And you don't work in an emergency program, you don't work in an emergency program, you don't also, how can I put it? You don't work as an emergency. There is no engagement, Madam Speaker, of payment or ensuring in any way, Madam Speaker, if your boss calls you under this law and you don't receive, unapiga sherehe mahali, you are on a weekend, you are unwinding, you are enjoying yourself, Madam Speaker, you are somewhere in Watamu or Rukunda or somewhere in Kendu Bay or somewhere in Busia or somewhere in Nandi. There is a place called Stephen Kositan Gardens, and you are unwinding, and your boss calls you. If you don't receive now, Madam Speaker, you might end being disciplined. And I know of a famous CEO who used to call his employees beyond evenings, during weekends, people on leave, people on annual leave, maternity, paternity leave. You can imagine, instead of having a paternity or maternity, taking care of your child, somebody somewhere is calling you, and if you don't reply, you risk developing. So, subsection 6, an employee shall not be reprimanded, punished, or subject to disciplinary action if the employee disregards a work-related communication during out-of-work hours. So therefore, even here in Parliament, your staff, Madam Speaker, you don't get called beyond their working hours. They have a right to refuse to pick. And if they don't pick that phone call, Madam Speaker, they should not be reprimanded for disciplinary action or, Madam Speaker, or even, I know the culprits are normally even in media. I have friends who are journalists. A fire breaks out in Kikomba, and you are working for certain media houses. I don't want to name names, risk. Somebody might think we are taking it out of the privilege here. And you are being called, can you go and cover Kikomba? And it is 2 a.m. in the morning. Madam Speaker, you are sleeping. You are performing godly duty at night, because the assignments that should be done at night, as God directed all of us in the Holy Book of Genesis. You are resting. Maybe even you are unwell. And your boss calls you, go and cover. And I think journalists suffer the brunt. Journalistic profession, whether they want to, for police and other, it's an emergency situation, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, and in a couple of minutes I will wind up. Then Senator Okiya Mtata will second, because he has a vast of knowledge on such issues, Madam Speaker. So in this, where an employer contacts an employee during the period, there is no mutually agreed out of work hours. So, Madam Speaker, if there is no agreement that your employer should call you beyond 5 or beyond work hours, because I know there are Kenyans who use night shift. So if you are working in night shift between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., as your boss, I'm not allowed to call you unless there is mutually working environment. And that one means I must compensate you as an employer. So many Kenyans were asking, what happens now? If my boss calls me and I'm enjoying, Madam Speaker, tomorrow is a public holiday, Some people have started winding down or winding up for the week, for the holiday. If, for example, they have left office like 42 minutes, what happens? So unless there is a mutual agreement of work, and that's why, for example, our staff here, traditionally, our working hours at Parliament are not the 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is a way we work. So this is mutual agreement. So I don't expect an avalanche of litigation simply because you are working in a night shift, and therefore, since they have said they should not call you beyond 5, that is misinterpretation of the law. There must be a proper arrangement, then there must be an issue of compensation. Madam Speaker, where an employer contracts an employee during the period where there is no mutual out of work hours, the employee shall not be obliged to respond and shall have the right to disconnect. I'm not saying when you see your boss's phone call, you switch off your phone or throw it away. Madam Speaker, I'm saying when you are called and there is no arrangement, you have a right to disconnect. Even the email you block, WhatsApp you block, there is SMS you block. I'm not encouraging employees in this country to block their bosses after 5. You know, there is that feature where you can block. It's called supplementary services or divert. But people, you don't need to divert to somebody else. You know, the people are very malicious. They can divert you to other areas, to even the famous, is it 199 or 999, the police diversion. So, Madam Speaker, you have a right. Number 2, may choose to respond for which an employee shall be entitled to court compensation. So if your boss calls you and you receive, you must be compensated. So if I'm calling you at 5:42 as your boss, and I give you an assignment that should be complete tomorrow, those overtime working hours must be compensated. And I think that's the law. So may you choose to disconnect, or you receive the assignment and then demand for compensation as per this law. Mr. Speaker, the provision of this section shall not apply to the provision of essential services, so it will work together under Section 81 of the Labor Relations Act. Mr. Speaker, a person who contravenes this section, this is my final part of presentation, is if you contravene. So if your boss calls and insists on you receiving, or you contravene this Section 27A that we are introducing above work hours, is that 1, not exceeding 500,000 shillings, or imprisonment of term not exceeding 1 year or both. So the right to disconnect, if your right as an employee is violated, the legal recourse, the legal remedy is you must pay that employee a compensation of 500,000, or 1 year as an employer, or both. But as Speaker, I think these are straightforward, because if you keep calling your employees, harassing them, giving them work, you are not compensating them, you are threatening their right to privacy. You are threatening their family time. You are threatening the burnout, the mental wellness, Madam Speaker, the energy. You know, you need people. I know of employees, Madam Speaker, when they leave office at 5, they go to the gym to get to become what you call summer bunnies. You know, in the U.S., especially this season, I think what we call this season that has come at the end of winter. People are trying to get what we call in street language summer bodies, or what we call summer bunnies. I'm told they travel to Kenya during a cold season. And I'm told men are malicious. When their wives or girlfriends get summer bodies, they say, "Uyu tutaeka mimba." So, Madam Speaker, what you are just saying in summary is the punishment is 500,000 or 1 year or both. And therefore, the Employers Federation of Kenya Employers, the Central Trade Union, the other unions that work for workers, the KMPDU, the KUDEA, the other unions should be aware of this provision. And I think employers should not, it is simple. If you are being paid way above 1,000 per hour, I don't know why it's hard, Madam Speaker, for the employer to pay. If there was a worker now, Madam Speaker, it is 47 minutes after 5. If they were paid within hours, I don't know why don't you want to pay in a remote manner. If I'm working from the house, it's the same as working from the office. By the way, COVID taught us that you can work effectively and efficiently from office. But Madam Speaker, but there were many, of course, ugly scenes. There are challenges coming, working from home, remotely. We saw, even here, we used to have hybrid sittings. Madam Speaker, and people working from home, we saw wonders. It was advantageous, but there are many challenges working remotely. And I remember using Skype, using and this what you call Sysmoc or something, an application where you are using Teams, where courts of law are using, and people, some people used to funny. I know the biggest challenge, Madam Speaker, that this right to disconnect, and many employers, is how do we monitor people working from home, and which time? Because there was a cartoon, Madam Speaker, where somebody was sleeping on the bed, and then he had ensured only the face is visible. But you can't tell whether they have worn a tie. I remember in this house there were many challenges. People used to put their beard and their eyes just to show when they were submitting, and you never know whether they have dressed properly for the meeting or for the house sitting. So those are challenges that come with remote working conditions. But I think with the challenges of COVID and other pandemic situations, Madam Speaker, and I think even it assists us, Madam Speaker, to ensure there are no traffic jams. And you know, traffic jams eat a lot of our time and resources. It even destroys our roads. Because we can do it remotely. Madam Speaker, I know, although this, I don't know whether Senator Umtata saw this in some international media. There was at some time, Madam Speaker, where people were questioning the etiquette of some students in the US delegating their assignments or homework to enterprising young Kenyans, Madam Speaker. And many people, where young Kenyans work for your assignment, you are in US, you are in Western country, you delegate. So although there is the issue of etiquette, it's the same working remote. Madam Speaker, the government under this is what we call the plan. This is the manifesto of the Kenya Kwanza government. And it is the promise that they had to Kenyans. One of the commitment of President William Ruto, and I saw somebody saying we have lost, as a government, we have lost our manifesto. Madam Speaker, I can confirm that the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza is still there. Because I saw some people saying in social media that the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza is missing. It's not, it's here. And one of the agenda is the digital superhighway and creative economy. This is one of the manifesto that the president undertook. And therefore, when we will build on issues of fiber optics, and we are going to give at least every constituency 100 computers and ICT labs. And young people will be able to work from their constituencies in those labs remotely. And therefore, this creative economy, the digital economy, superhighway. So this right to disconnect, you can imagine you are working somewhere remotely for the last since 7 in the morning up to evening. This right to disconnect is because there is tempting for you to stay on the computer, to stay long hours because either of many challenges. So on this, you can see the government is moving on ways of having digital superhighway and creative economy where young people, Madam Speaker, will ensure that, so it is captured in our engagement. Even when you look at the section on the public service, not the service economy, but public service, I have, Madam Speaker, and therefore this should be in place because the public service should also be creative. I am surprised, Madam Speaker, when you look at the Charter of Public Service, it talks about the presidential award system digitally. They are yet, our public service as a country are yet to adapt to the changes of working remotely from home. So when you look at this, and that is why I was looking at the, Madam Speaker, at the annual report for the financial year. I think this is almost the late on the Public Service Commission. I've read through it, Madam Speaker, but unfortunately, they are yet to adapt to the issues of remote working. And I think the biggest employer is government. We must see a way of working from home. to ensure we provide service. But even as this, Madam Speaker, it is important that the working from home the Public Service Commission, the PSC, should also change its ways and be able to accommodate. And therefore, Madam Speaker, just for the benefit of Kenyans and all of us and colleagues who are following, out of work means hours other than the hours of work agreed upon between an employer and employee in the contract of employment. So if you work at night shift, the fact that the rules and regulations of Employment Act says 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., if your contract says, for example, on our colleagues who work as the secretariat in your office, Madam Speaker, maybe their contract or the agreement as they work from 9 a.m. to maybe 7 p.m. So that is what I mean by definition. If you are, for example, your bodyguard or your driver, Madam Speaker, works between maybe 7 a.m. and 9 p.m., and it's agreed, that is what I mean out of working hours. Madam Speaker, our deepest condolences. We were informed that you lost your driver. Our prayers and thoughts are with the family of your driver, and we keep praying for you. Madam Speaker, the right to disconnect means an employee's entitlement not to be contacted by employer during out of work hours as by the employer's policy. Madam Speaker, in relationship, this thing would work very rightly. Because when people, especially as young people, when you no longer want somebody, you block them. When they boot you in our street languages and they leave you, this can work very well, right, to disconnect, where young people will block you, unakula block, and I think that is what, so that is what it means, the right to disconnect. And therefore, Madam Speaker, those are just quick definitions that I wanted the members to be aware. This is the digital age. We are moving to digital age. So that is the future. There is nothing else, Madam Speaker. And therefore, in conclusion, I want to say, without fear of contradiction, the country is ready for digital age. We are looking at the possibility of working remotely from home. Madam Speaker, whenever I sit in the Public Accounts Committee, I normally see Senator Okia Mtata coming with a very big laptop, very huge laptop. I don't know which company is that, and he works remotely. He tells me I'm filing something on the courts, I'm filing these issues on the courts, and I find that is the direction we should take. It is either we agree, either we change with the change, or change will change us, Madam Speaker. So I ask my friends in Federation Kenya employers, the employers, they should not fight this law. In fact, I'm assisting them. Even if you are an employer, for example, me, I am a farmer. I have 1 or 2, 3 cows. So I'm an employer. I've employed a heads boy. That heads boy can be calling me at night. And I'm tired. I don't want to receive any phone calls. So it's also a two-way traffic. It helps, Madam Speaker, all of us in ensuring. So I really want to ask the employers, the trade unions, please embrace the change in the working environment. We cannot keep on 8 to 5 p.m. We cannot be disturbing the right to privacy of employees, family time. We need to avoid burnout so that we increase productivity of employees wherever they are. We need to protect the mental wellness of our employees, Madam Speaker, and ensure that we move forward. Second and finally is to challenge the Labour Committee and the Public Service Commission, Madam Speaker, that they need also to be creative. They need to also integrate remote working from home. I don't see why a clerk should be every 8 to 5. If they can work from home, then so be it. But that right to work from home or remotely should not be abused. Even employees also, they should not take advantage of right to disconnect, to harass their employers or in case of submitting. Madam Speaker, with so very many remarks, so that allow my brother, Senator Okia Omtata, to also contribute and second my motion, is to say thank you for the Committee of Labor, for your office, who have always stood and facilitated, assisting in drafting and publishing of the bill. I look forward, Madam Speaker, to reply consequently, and I hope the National Assembly will process this bill and allow the President to sign into law it will be the first in Africa and among only less than 10 countries across the world who have adopted right to disconnect a digital age. Madam Speaker, with those main remarks, you will allow me to Senator Okiya Omtata to second. Thank you.
Senator Omtata.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the Employment Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 11 of 2022, which has been presented to this House by the Honorable Senator Samson Cherargei, MP. I will not repeat what the Senator has eloquently presented. All I'll do, Madam Speaker, is to say that this bill is very, very timely, and it's clearly anchored in the Constitution of Kenya. I will begin by referring the House to Section 7, Clause 1 of the 6th schedule to the Constitution of Kenya, which states, all law in force immediately before the effective date continue in force and shall be construed with the alterations, adaptations, qualifications, and exceptions necessary to bring it into conformity with the Constitution. Basically, what this bill is trying to do is to bring the employment bill, which was enacted in the year 2007, into the Constitution of Kenya, so that we don't have to read and do the adaptations, but Parliament does the adaptation for us. And the important thing that the bill is doing, and the section of the Constitution that I would like to refer to, is Article 41 of the Constitution of Kenya, which provides for labor rights. And Section 41, Clause 2A, Clause 2B says that every worker has the right, A, to fair remuneration, and B, to reasonable working conditions. The reasonable working conditions are what the bill is trying to achieve, so that people, when outside working hours, can enjoy their privacy, can pursue other legitimate causes, unless it becomes absolutely necessary to engage them in matters concerning their work, where they work. Madam Speaker, in terms of remuneration, the bill also tries to underscore the requirement for employees to be compensated for any work done outside the official working hours. And of course, the bill goes further to embrace the digital economy, where all of us are headed. So I think that this bill is timely, and I second it, and I pray, as the mover prayed, that it will pass in this House and get the concurrence in the National Assembly, so that we can have an employment act that is awake to the edicts of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which pronounces itself on the rights of workers. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I second the bill. Thank you.
Senator Murgor. Honorable Senators, you can hold on first. I now propose that the
Employment Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 11 of 2022 be read a second time. Senator Murgo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute also to this bill. Madam Speaker, the world today is becoming a world of pressure in many ways. Pressure coming from family responsibility, pressure coming from job, pressure coming from environments and neighbors and so on. And so whatever opportunity one can get to work in an environment that is conducive to them so they do not face a lot of pressure will actually enhance the ability and also the effort that one can contribute towards expected duty or work that one is doing. The world also has had the opportunity and advantage of technology, which is unlike what it has been traditionally. And so for a worker to work from home, to work from wherever is convenient for them is quite in order and appropriate because the technology that there is today can make them and enable them to contribute towards work just as much as they are in an office. And then along with that, many settings may not allow for space either by a worker not having an adequate office or a place to work from. Therefore, working from home or wherever it is convenient for them to perform their duties is very appropriate because some situations may not have office space, and therefore allowing a worker to contribute positively towards their work is very appropriate, and therefore I support the bill. Thank you.
Senator Kibwana, were you hoping to? Okay, Senator Hamida.
No, I wanted to raise on a point of order, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, it didn't show. But according to Standing Order 41 regarding the quorum, I realize there's no quorum, Madam Speaker. Should I quote the Standing Order 41? If at any time in the course of the proceedings of the Senate, a senator objects that there is not a quorum present, the Speaker or the chairperson shall count the senators present in the Senate of the committee as the case may be. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Clerk, can you confirm whether we have quorum or not? The clerk has confirmed that there is no quorum. So can the Sergeant at Arms ring the bell for 10 minutes? Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 41-2A, there being no quorum, the Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, 6th June 2023 at 2:30 p.m.